Long ago, Zen masters uncovered a significant insight. Genuine tranquility does not stem from attempting to silence your thoughts, but rather from allowing your mind to revert to its inherent quietness. Tonight, we invite you on a voyage through tender lessons that remind us that serenity is not a destination to reach, but a state we can return to. Before we dive in, feel free to share the time and your location while listening. These are not lectures to memorize or puzzles to unravel. They are soft whispers resonating from the essence of Zen Buddhism. Each whisper serves as a gentle lantern illuminating your journey toward deep, restorative slumber. There isn't a correct way to engage with this. No wisdom you need to grasp tightly, no meaning you are required to decode. Just a series of present moments flowing effortlessly from one tranquil tale to the next, each one drawing you further into the spaciousness that resides beyond your thoughts. So, find your comfort now. Release your shoulders. Allow your jaw to relax. Just unwind and listen. In a remote mountain monastery famed for its intensive training, two monks were tasked with practicing walking meditation together. The meditation path, a site of tranquility, had been established many years prior, formed from countless ancient bricks generously given by neighboring villages. Over the years, the passageway had succumbed to nature and age. Some bricks had loosened and wobbled, others had fractured entirely, while several protruded at awkward angles, creating a surface that demanded careful navigation. Each day, after their seated meditation, the two monks would walk this path in silence, engaging in the slow, mindful movements that were pivotal to their spiritual growth. The trail meandered through a picturesque garden, skirted ancient trees, and edged a gentle stream, crafting a potentially serene backdrop for their practice. However, the first monk found the state of the pathway to be a persistent source of annoyance and distraction. Each morning, as they embarked on their walking meditation, his inner dialogue began almost instantaneously. "This path is utterly awful," he thought, his mind brimming with criticism and complaints. "Why haven't the monastery leaders repaired these damaged bricks? How can anyone hope to practice mindfulness when they're continually preoccupied with avoiding uneven stones?" As he walked, his focus was consumed by cataloging each flaw. Here's a brick that juts out too high. There's a gap where a brick is entirely missing. Over there lies a section that has settled too low, creating a small puddle after rain. His meditation transformed into a struggle of frustration and judgment rather than a space of peaceful awareness. "This is simply intolerable," he lamented in his head. "I keep tripping over these obstructions. How is anyone supposed to find inner calm or hone their concentration under such conditions? The path tarnishes the monastery's dignity." In contrast, the second monk walked the same trail each day in complete silence. His expression remained calm and focused, and his movements exuded grace and mindfulness. He seemed to glide over the uneven ground effortlessly, never appearing perturbed or thrown off by the path's irregularities. After several weeks of shared practice, the first monk's irritation reached a peak. He could no longer contain his puzzlement about his companion's seemingly unfazed demeanor amid such evidently poor conditions. "How can you be so calm and at peace?" he inquired after their morning walk. "This path is incredibly terrible. The fractured bricks make it nearly impossible for serious meditation. How do you maintain such a positive outlook when the circumstances are so challenging? The second monk took a moment to reflect before responding, his tone soft and empathetic. I believe I understand the root of our differing experiences, he replied with a gentle smile. You perceive this path as a hindrance to your spiritual journey. You view the uneven bricks as disturbances disrupting your meditation, as issues obstructing your pursuit of mindfulness and inner calm. He gestured toward the path they had traveled. Yet, I regard this pathway itself as a part of my spiritual journey. Each loose brick serves as a perfect cue to fully engage with my present moment and actions. Every irregular surface offers a chance to refine my balance, both in body and in mind. Every challenging step necessitates my complete attention and awareness. With enthusiasm building in his explanation, the second monk continued, because of this path's condition, I am compelled to be entirely mindful with each step I take. There is no room for carelessness. My mind cannot drift to other worries. The battered bricks require my full presence and engagement. Rather than viewing them as impediments, I perceive countless chances to enrich my practice from moment to moment. He gazed directly at his bewildered companion. Instead of feeling resentment toward these conditions, I have become grateful for them. This imperfect path has imparted more wisdom about mindfulness and present moment awareness than any smooth, straightforward trail possibly could. It has transformed into my greatest instructor. As the Buddha recognized, we become our thoughts. All existence arises from our thinking. With our thoughts, we shape our world. Here, we uncover how fundamentally our perceptions influence our reality, changing the same scenarios into either obstacles or opportunities. This age-old wisdom sheds light on a profound truth regarding the connection between external circumstances and internal experiences. Both monks traversed an identical path, experiencing the same loose bricks, uneven terrain, and challenging conditions. What varied entirely was the perspective each monk brought to their encounter with these circumstances. The first monk's suffering stemmed not from the actual conditions, the journey of transformation. The essence of resistance does not lie in the path itself, but rather in his refusal to accept it as it was. He held a vision of how an ideal meditation journey should be: smooth, flat, and predictable. When comparing the actual path to this perfect image, he found it consistently wanting. His practice turned into a struggle against reality, rather than a harmonious interaction with what was truly present. Why do we often believe that our spiritual journeys, our relationships, and our daily lives should unfold under flawless conditions? We envision that tranquility, growth, and happiness will emerge only when circumstances perfectly align with our desires. Yet, as the second monk learned, waiting for the ideal situation can lead to overlooking the profound lessons that arise from imperfect realities. This tendency reveals itself throughout our existence in various forms. We may delay our happiness until we find a better job, improve our health, or simplify our relationships. We put off feeling content until the economy stabilizes, the weather perks up, or others become more reasonable. In doing this, we forfeit the opportunity to discover peace, growth, and even joy within our current realities, challenging though they may be. The fragmented bricks in the narrative symbolize the flaws in our everyday experiences that we typically interpret as obstacles rather than educators. The tough discussion that challenges us to practice patience. The financial pressures prompting a reassessment of our priorities. The physical discomfort that reveals the truth of impermanence. These hurdles can either inflict suffering or serve as gateways to awakening, depending on our viewpoint. Think about how this wisdom might resonate with your current experiences. Are there areas in your life where you're waiting for things to improve before fully engaging and being present? Maybe you've been deferring contentment until your living situation alters, your health enhances, or your relationships become less complex. Zen Master Suzuki Roshi wisely stated, "Every one of you is perfect as you are, yet there's always room for improvement." This paradox mirrors the second monk's way of accepting conditions just as they are while skillfully navigating within them. In meditation, we frequently face this same choice between these two methods. We may start sitting down to meditate, immediately sensing restlessness in our mind, discomfort in our body, or turbulence in our emotions. The first monk would view these as barriers to genuine meditation. Meanwhile, the second monk's approach would involve using these very conditions as the essence of meditation. The Buddha imparted, "The mind is everything. What you think you become." When we categorize obstacles as challenges, we become frustrated and resistant. But when we interpret obstacles as educators, our curiosity and engagement flourish. As you reflect on the challenges present in your life this evening, can you pinpoint any fractured bricks you've categorized solely as barriers to your peace or happiness? How might your approach shift if you face tomorrow's challenges with the second monk's mindset, viewing each lopsided moment as an opportunity for deeper awareness and presence? As the Buddha advised, every day we are reborn. What matters most is our actions today. Every step on the path ahead provides a fresh chance to choose between resistance and engagement, between problem perception or finding opportunities for wisdom. Continuing our exploration of Zen Buddhism's insights, let's delve into a tale that illustrates how to redefine our connection with suffering. This is the story of the salt and the lake. In a secluded monastery amid gentle hills, there resided a venerable master known for his patience and insight. Among his pupils was a young apprentice, whose spirit had grown weighed down by grievances regarding life's hardships. Each morning, he arrived bearing fresh complaints. "Master, why does life feel so arduous? Yesterday, external noise disrupted my meditation, and today, my back aches from sitting on the unforgiving floor. When will this agony cease?" His words bore the heaviness of someone who had compiled every minor inconvenience until it transformed into a daunting load. The master listened with boundless patience, but as days turned into weeks, he recognized that mere words would not alter the apprentice's viewpoint. One brisk morning, bathed in golden sunlight streaming through their modest abode, the master issued an unusual request. "My dear student," he said kindly, "please fetch me some salt from the kitchen. A handful will do." The apprentice, perplexed by this simple directive, complied nonetheless. He returned with his palm scooped, containing coarse white grains. The master then produced a small glass filled with water and instructed, "Add all that salt into this glass and drink it." The young man hesitated. "Master, That seems like an excessive amount of salt for such a little water. Trust the process, the master replied. Drink it. The apprentice poured the salt into the glass, observing as the grains dissolved into a murky, unappealing mixture. He raised it to his lips and took a hefty sip, immediately grimacing as the intensely salty flavor overwhelmed his senses. "How does it taste?" the master inquired. "Bitter," the apprentice retorted. "Terribly, overwhelmingly bitter. I can scarcely tolerate it." The master chuckled softly. "Good. Now, take that same amount of salt and follow me." They walked in reflective silence until reaching the banks of a serene mountain lake. The water lay before them like a flawless mirror, flawlessly mirroring the sky, making it hard to discern where the earth ended and the heaven started. "Now," the master instructed, "pour this handful of salt into the lake." The apprentice stepped into the shallow waters, opened his hands, and observed as the salt crystals dissipated across the surface, swiftly dissolving without leaving behind any visible mark. "Now drink from the lake," the master commanded. The young man cupped his hands to gather lake water. The journey of flowing water. He cupped his hands to gather the water before lifting it to his lips. The liquid was crisp, invigorating, with the unblemished flavor of mountain streams. "What do you think of it?" the master queried. "It's much fresher," the apprentice responded, his astonishment evident. "Pristine and pure. Can you taste the salt?" the master asked gently. The pupil took a moment, focusing intently. "No," he said thoughtfully. "I don't taste any salt at all." The master settled beside his student on a smooth boulder by the water's edge. With a tenderness that spoke volumes, his calloused hands enveloped the young man's hands. "My dear pupil," the master conveyed, "the suffering of life is mere salt. Nothing more, nothing less. While the quantity of pain present in life is fixed, the bitterness we feel hinges entirely on the vessel we choose for that pain." With newfound insight, the apprentice listened closely. "In times of distress," the master elaborated, "the only control you truly possess is over your reaction. You can opt to be a small vessel where each granule of salt inundates your senses. Or you can decide to widen your perspective, becoming like this expansive lake, where the same salt dissolves innocuously into a larger reality." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. "Stop being a vessel, my friend. Become a lake." The Buddha imparted a timeless truth. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. This core principle encapsulates the essence of our interaction with hardship. While we cannot erase the trials inherent in our human journey, we wield incredible influence over how that pain impacts us. This narrative illuminates truths about consciousness itself. Our awareness isn't a fixed entity. It can contract into the limited space of a vessel where every obstacle looms large, or it can expand into the openness of a lake, wherein the same challenges become manageable. Why do we often opt for the vessel perspective instead of the lake? Primarily, we tend to be myopic, fixating intently on our discomfort, allowing it to consume our focus. Secondly, we have a tendency to weave extensive narratives around singular painful events, amplifying their significance through unrealistic stories of how unfair life is. Lastly, We frequently compare our suffering against improbable ideals of how life should unfold. Adopting the lake perspective does not downplay authentic pain nor promote passivity. Instead, it provides a more adept means of navigating the inevitable trials, preventing them from being exacerbated by needless suffering. With expanded awareness, we approach difficulties with increased creativity, unfettered by feeling overwhelmed. Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh articulated, "Thanks to impermanence, everything is possible." Through a lake-minded view, we realize that all things rise and fade within the vastness of awareness, transforming today's crises into tomorrow's memories. We cultivate lake-like qualities through practices that naturally broaden our perception. Meditation invites us to rest within this expansive presence. Gratitude helps us acknowledge experiences beyond our immediate troubles. Acts of service remind us that our pain is part of the collective human experience. As you reflect on present struggles tonight, can you appreciate the contrast between engaging with them from a vessel mindset versus a lake mindset? What would it be like to allow your perception to stretch beyond the immediate sharpness of pain and take in the broader context of this moment? In the Buddha's words, if you desire to understand your mind, sit still and observe it. If clarity permeates your mind, happiness will unfold. What he refers to as clarity isn't the absence of salt, but rather an expansive capability to hold it wisely. By transitioning from vessels to lakes, we uncover the reality that pain can become an entryway to profound compassion and freedom. Now, let us delve into a tale that illustrates the distinction between superficial insight and authentic wisdom. This is the narrative of following the stream. Deep within a sprawling wilderness, with lofty pines reaching for the limitless sky, two city dwellers found themselves utterly disoriented. Their intent was only a simple day hike in the high timber, but overconfidence and inadequate preparation had led them far astray from any familiar path. For an entire day and night, they meandered through the thick foliage, their unease escalating with every fleeting hour. The comforting urban environment they once knew felt impossibly remote. Every tree appeared identical. Each route resulted in another disorienting fork in the path, and their ability to navigate had vanished. Just as dread began to creep in, they stumbled upon an elderly hermit, seated serenely beside a small clearing. His weathered face bore the marks of years spent in solitude, and his tranquil presence provided immediate solace to the frantic wanderers. "How do we return to civilization?" they inquired urgently, their voices reflecting the desperation of those who had drained their options. The hermit regarded them with kindly eyes, seemingly perceiving more than just their immediate dilemma. "I could direct you," he stated thoughtfully, "but you would still lose your way." The two exchanged puzzled looks. This was not the simple guidance they had sought. "What do we do then?" they implored, frustration seeping into their tones. "Go with the flow," replied the hermit calmly. "Pardon?" One of them reacted, clearly anticipating a more practical answer. The hermit smiled and gestured toward a gentle stream bubbling joyfully through the clearing. "Just follow it. You notice that stream over there? Streams flow into creeks, creeks into rivers, and rivers lead to towns. Plus, along the way, you'll have fresh water and edible berries." This straightforward advice resonated immediately with the stranded travelers. Following the water downstream was indeed a smart means to reach human habitats, and the stream offered essential resources for their survival. But one of the men, perhaps inspired by past spiritual teachings, asked a deeper question. Is this what Zen practitioners refer to when they say to go with the flow? The hermit considered the question thoughtfully. "You could say that," he replied, his eyes twinkling with wisdom. "It's about yielding to life's currents, which often guide us where we need to be." A journey of wisdom. In that moment, contemplating the reply with the same meticulous care he had offered their need for directions, the hermit replied both affirmatively and negatively, leaving the two men to decipher the meaning behind his words. The Buddha once expressed, "If you grasp the meaning, then all things remain as they are. If you fail to comprehend, then all things remain as they are." This teaching highlights the intricate nature of wisdom that the hermit represented in his counsel to the lost travelers. The profound lesson here illustrates how genuine spiritual guidance functions on multiple dimensions simultaneously. The advice given by the hermit was both entirely practical and deeply metaphorical. At the surface, advising them to follow the stream was just sensible wilderness survival. Yet, on a more profound level, it symbolized the holistic approach to living that Zen philosophy promotes. Why did the hermit indicate that the travelers would remain lost even if they were provided with directions? This underscores a crucial distinction between acquiring information and cultivating wisdom. External directions may offer temporary guidance, but they do not enhance our internal navigational skills. Authentic wisdom involves becoming attuned to the natural signals and flowing with the inherent currents of life itself. Reflect on how this applies to our pursuit of spirituality. Frequently, we seek out teachers and teachings with the request for specific guidance. Tell me what to do to attain enlightenment. Provide me the exact meditation method that will erase my troubles. Yet, while this request is comprehensible, it overlooks the more profound aspect. Authentic spiritual guidance does not furnish us with a map, but instead instructs us on how to interpret the landscape. It does not deliver someone else's solutions, but helps us cultivate the ability to discover our own. Just as the stream innately knows its path to the sea, each of us possesses an intrinsic wisdom that can lead us if we learn to trust and follow it. The phrase "go with the flow" has become so pervasive in modern culture that its essence is often obscured, frequently misconstrued as aimless acceptance or a lack of direction. However, the hermit's ambiguous response suggests a more layered comprehension. True flow does not equate to wandering without purpose. Rather, it involves aligning our actions with the natural currents of wisdom and compassion. The stream embodies the Tao, the fundamental rhythm that permeates all existence. By synchronizing ourselves with this deeper flow, our actions become both effortless and impactful. We cease resisting reality and begin to engage with the flow of existence, rather than opposing it. However, this necessitates nurturing a different kind of intelligence than our typical problem-solving mindset. The travelers sought explicit directions because that is how rational thought functions, relying on clear sequential steps. Conversely, the deeper intelligence to which the hermit alluded functions more like intuition, discerning the correct path moment by moment instead of adhering to a set plan. This is why contemplative traditions prioritize present moment awareness. The stream does not concern itself with the whereabouts of the ocean. It instinctively follows the direction that feels appropriate in the moment. Similarly, as we develop moment-to-moment mindfulness, we become capable of sensing the right response to each situation without needing to map out the entire journey ahead of time. As you navigate the intricacies of your life tonight, can you attune to the streams of inherent wisdom flowing beneath the surface of your daily preoccupations? What does it imply to trust that profound current while still responsibly addressing practical demands? The wisdom of the Buddha recalls, thousands of candles can be lit from a single candle, and the candle's life is not shortened. The hermit's guidance served as illumination in the traveler's minds, offering not merely directions but a framework for engaging with life that could benefit them in countless future scenarios. Now, let us delve into a narrative illustrating the fundamental truth that underlies all experiences. This is the story of a meditation student and the wise reminder. A young practitioner had devoted several months to meditation with sincere commitment. Every morning and evening, he would quietly settle on his cushion, shut his eyes, and endeavor to follow the breathing exercises his teacher had taught him. Some days felt seamless and serene. However, recently, he had been wrestling with what appeared to be relentless distraction and discomfort. On this particular morning, he could barely remain still for 5 minutes before frustration consumed him. His thoughts raced about work, relationships, and a multitude of trivial concerns. His legs ached from the unfamiliar position he adopted. Despite his best attempts to center himself on his breath, he found himself continuously drawn away by mental distractions and physical unease. After what felt like an eternity, but was likely only 20 minutes, he abandoned his practice and sought his teacher. He discovered the elderly monk tending to a small garden behind the meditation hall, diligently uprooting weeds in the gentle morning sunlight. "Master," the student said, his tone laden with discouragement and self-critique, "my meditation is terrible. I cannot concentrate on anything. I feel so scattered and distracted. My legs ache incessantly, and I keep dozing off when I'm not being diverted. Everything about my practice feels flawed. It's just dreadful." The teacher gazed up from his gardening, soil still clinging to his weathered hands, and met the student's frustrated look with calm, wise eyes. He absorbed the young man's list of grievances without judgment or astonishment, as if he had encountered those very same sentiments countless times before. "It will pass," the teacher replied matter-of-factly, returning to his weeding as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. The student stood there momentarily, somewhat taken aback at the succinctness and apparent dismissiveness of the answer. He had anticipated comprehensive advice, perhaps a new method, or at the very least, the journey of the one-eyed seeker. In a serene valley adorned with cherry blossoms, a young man was captivated by tales of a celebrated Zen master whose disciples attained deep insights through steadfast dedication. Fueled by spiritual enthusiasm and a desire to change his life, this eager seeker made a long journey to the master's monastery, his mind ablaze with the aspiration to reach enlightenment in record time. Upon his arrival, weary and dusty from the journey but glowing with excitement, he wasted no time and requested a meeting with the master. The master welcomed him warmly and, noticing the intensity in the young man's gaze, posed a simple question: "What is it that you seek?" The young man, not hesitating for a moment, replied with fervor, "I wish to become enlightened as quickly as possible." The master chuckled softly. "Very well, then. For the next 7 years, you will be our gardener." The young man's enthusiasm was momentarily deflated by this unexpected task, yet he accepted it, determined to stay committed to his path. Day after day, under the sun and the rain, he dug, planted, and watered the garden, all while nurturing his fervent desire for enlightenment. As the seasons changed, he often found himself lost in thought, imagining what it would be like to experience that profound clarity he craved. Over time, the young man began to appreciate the beauty of his work. He noticed the resilience of the plants, the interplay of light and shadow, and the rhythms of nature surrounding him. Although he still yearned for enlightenment, he started to realize that he was growing in ways he had not initially anticipated. His mind began to quiet, and moments of unexpected peace began to settle within him. After 3 years, filled with a newfound sense of wonder, he approached the master again. "Master," he exclaimed, "the garden has become a source of joy for me." The master smiled and simply replied, "It is good that you have discovered this." Unsatisfied with the brevity of the response but unable to articulate his thoughts, the young man returned to his labor, still seeking that ultimate realization. As the years unfolded, he continued to immerse himself in the rhythms of the garden and life itself. With each passing season, he began to engage more deeply with the present moment, even as his longing for enlightenment remained. After 5 years, he approached the master once more, this time expressing a mix of frustration and clarity. "Master, I am still waiting for enlightenment." The master responded with a gentle reminder, "It will come when it is time." This statement, though familiar to him now, bore a weight of understanding he hadn't grasped before. The young man realized that enlightenment was not merely a destination to reach, but an unfolding process inherently tied to his experiences, both in the garden and in life. His fierce desire began to soften into a compassionate curiosity about the journey itself. Finally, after 7 years of tending to the garden, the young man approached the master for the last time. "Master, I have invested so much time, but I still feel incomplete. What must I do?" The master looked at him with wisdom in his eyes. "You have already done everything necessary. Enlightenment is not something to grasp. It lives in the acceptance of each moment, just as the garden flourishes with care." In that instant, everything clicked for the eager seeker. He had spent so long chasing an elusive goal that he forgot to truly embrace the moments along the way. The master's words resonated deeply, awakening an understanding within him. He learned that the very act of being present, tending to the garden, observing its nature, was its own form of awakening. As he returned to his garden, now alive with color and life, he found within himself a serene acceptance of the transient nature of existence. Just as seasons change, so too do experiences, pleasures, and challenges. The realization washed over him that holding tightly to the desire for permanence leads only to suffering. In the end, the young man understood the true essence of his journey. Enlightenment is an ongoing dance with the nature of reality, embracing both the highs and lows, and recognizing that each moment, like each flower in the garden, holds its unique beauty, destined to bloom and wither in its time. The master had guided him not just toward an event, but towards an appreciation of the present, where true wisdom resides. This teaching unfolds within us as we explore our relationship with the world, each transient moment inviting us to let go of attachment and discover the profound beauty that exists in the impermanence of life. The path of awareness broadens as we learn to celebrate each experience while holding it lightly. This is the way of the one-eyed seeker, the wisdom of patience. In a humble chamber overlooking a serene garden, a seasoned teacher received a youthful aspirant who sought the truth of Zen. The young man watched as monks gracefully tended to the plants, their movements unhurried and fluid. Bowing deeply, he addressed the master, saying, "I have come to immerse myself fully in Zen. I pledge to devote myself with unwavering resolve. Please tell me, if I dedicate myself wholeheartedly, how long will it take for me to attain Zen?" After a lengthy pause, in which the master examined the eager expression on the young man's face and noted the tension in his posture, he responded earnestly, 10 years. The student's eyes flared with astonishment. 10 years felt like an eternity, especially when enlightenment seemed so crucial for his happiness. Surely, if approached correctly, the journey could be expedited. "But Master," he implored, leaning in closer, "what if I put in extreme effort and strive to learn rapidly? What if I meditate for longer periods than the other students, delve deeper into the texts, and practice more rigorously? How much time would that require?" The master considered this with equal contemplation before responding gently, 20 years. Confusion clouded the young man's face as frustration set in. This response defied logic. How could greater commitment lead to a longer timeline? Doubt began to creep in as he thought the master might not grasp the depth of his dedication. "But Master," he pressed, urgency creeping into his voice, "what if I commit entirely? What if I devote every waking moment to practice, sleep only when absolutely necessary, and push my limits to extremes? How long would it take then?" 30 years, the master replied, unwavering. The student was now thoroughly perplexed and irate. None of this aligned with his understanding of how progress worked. In every other pursuit, whether music, martial arts, or academics, putting in more effort yielded quicker improvements. Why should spirituality be an exception? "Master, I cannot comprehend this," he confessed, unable to mask his disappointment. "Every time I declare my intent to work harder, you suggest I will take longer. This is entirely counterintuitive. Why do you assert this?" With a gentle, compassionate expression, the master responded as a wise parent might to a child capable of understanding profound truths. "When you focus solely on the result, you neglect the journey," he explained softly. "The old wisdom teaches us that a 1,000-mile journey begins with a single step." From this exchange springs a vital lesson about the nature of spiritual growth and the irony of fixating solely on results. Why can a strong focus on goals actually hinder our spiritual evolution? Zen Buddhism sheds light on several ways excessive ambition obstructs realization. First is the issue of scattered focus. When part of our awareness is fixated on measuring progress toward a distant goal, we cannot fully engage in the present moment practices essential for awakening. Think about learning a musical instrument. If you occupy half your practice time worrying about when you'll be ready for public performance, that mental energy detracts from the focused attention needed for mastering finger positions, rhythm, and tone. True musicality arises from deep immersion in the current moment, not anxious forecasts of future ability. The second barrier is what Zen refers to as the gaining mind, the subtle desire that turns spiritual practice into a transaction. If we practice meditation to achieve enlightenment, pore over texts to become wise, or cultivate kindness to improve ourselves, we approach the path as consumers instead of participants. This mindset creates an inherent split between who we presently are and the versions of ourselves we wish to become. The Buddha reminded us, "What you seek is found where you're viewing from." This profound statement reaches the heart of the Master's lesson. Zen isn't a goal to be reached, but rather an understanding to be recognized. It isn't a place we arrive at, it's the very awareness that accompanies our journey. This ancient teaching clarifies why frantic spiritual pursuit often leads to defeat. When we desperately chase after enlightenment, we operate under the faulty assumption that our current experience is somehow lacking or incomplete. Yet, Zen imparts that the very seeking mind is the awareness we've been trying to discover. Reflect on your own learning experiences. Haven't your most significant realizations often surfaced when you were not consciously seeking them? Perhaps during a nature walk, while washing dishes, or simply sitting in silence without an agenda. Those moments of authentic awareness embody the wisdom the Master pointed to. Enlightenment emerges when we cease dividing our attention between what is and what could be. Zen Master Hungpa advised, "Your everyday mind is the way," urging us to scrutinize our approach to spiritual practice. Are we engaging in practice to metamorphose into someone different? Or are we seeking to recognize who we already are? Are we traversing the path to arrive at a different place? Or are we uncovering the understanding that the journey itself is the purpose? The student's misconception lay not in his aspiration for enlightenment, but in his belief that it existed outside his immediate experience. Each time he expressed a desire to work harder, he was merely distancing himself from the innate awareness that practice reveals. Like trying to grasp your shadow by sprinting, the more intently you pursue it, the more elusive it becomes. In Zen, we nurture what is called just sitting meditation, free from the gaining mindset, agenda, and the division of attention. The essence of contentment, a journey to acceptance. In the delicate balance between our current efforts and our aspirations, it does not imply that we should become apathetic or lose our commitment. Rather, we should direct our full attention to each moment of practice, allowing insights to arise organically rather than imposing them through sheer willpower. Think about how this principle could extend into other facets of your existence. Perhaps in your relationships, where excessive striving for love often alienates others, or in your creative pursuits, where attempting to force inspiration results in artificial outcomes, while a relaxed focus facilitates a natural flow of creativity. This evening, as your thoughts race towards envisioned futures, the person you wish to become, the tranquility you seek, the wisdom you strive to attain, can you recall the Master's lesson? Can you softly guide your attention back to the path, realizing that the journey itself holds everything you believed you were searching for at its conclusion? Buddha once articulated this notion: there is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path. By navigating this journey with unwavering awareness, we come to realize that what we assumed was waiting for us at the finish line is present in every single step. As we proceed, let's turn our focus to a tale that illustrates acceptance and the mastery of contentment. This is the wisdom of the shepherd. Along a rugged mountain path adorned with wildflowers, a weary traveler met a shepherd who was caring for his flock. As the sun rose steadily and clouds gathered ominously, hinting at potential rain or intense heat, the shepherd rested serenely on a smooth rock, observing his sheep feed peacefully amidst the verdant grasses. His face reflected the tranquility of one who had spent many seasons beneath the expansive sky, absorbing lessons that only the natural world can impart. There was an unmistakable quality about him, a remarkable calm that captured the traveler's curiosity. "Good morning, friend," the traveler greeted, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "What sort of weather are we expecting today?" The shepherd glanced up, his eyes sparkling with the clarity of a mountain stream, and smiled warmly. "The kind of weather I enjoy," he answered simply, as though it were the most obvious reply imaginable. The traveler hesitated, puzzled. He had anticipated a practical weather forecast that could aid in his daily plans, yet instead found himself faced with what seemed like convoluted reasoning that offered little practical insight. "How can you know it will be the sort of weather you enjoy?" he inquired, his voice tinged with frustration intermingled with curiosity. The shepherd's grin broadened, and with a gesture towards the vastness of the sky above, where clouds mingled with clear patches in an eternal dance, he responded, "Having learned, my friend, that I cannot always have what I prefer, I have come to love whatever I receive. Thus, I am confident we will experience the kind of weather I enjoy." The traveler remained silent, absorbing the profound simplicity of this insight as it took root in his understanding. Here was someone who had uncovered a truth that no weather forecast could provide: liberation from the anxiety that comes with uncertainty. As Buddha noted, attachment is at the heart of suffering. The essence of this tale reveals that true contentment stems not from exerting control over external circumstances, but from reshaping our relationship with the circumstances we encounter. Why do we wear ourselves out attempting to manipulate life to fit our preferences instead of discovering peace within what life offers? The shepherd exemplifies what Zen refers to as profound acceptance, not a passive resignation, but a deep-seated wisdom that understands opposition to reality as the main source of distress. When we resist what is, we initiate an internal conflict that drains our vitality and obstructs our ability to find contentment. When we learn to harmonize with reality as it unfolds, we unveil the immense tranquility that comes from flowing with, rather than against, the current. Reflect upon how much mental and emotional energy we expend daily resisting situations outside our influence. Traffic jams, unexpected weather conditions, people failing to meet our expectations. Every act of resistance creates a slight constriction in our consciousness, a small rebellion against reality that accumulates into enduring discontent. The shepherd's perspective does not imply becoming passive or relinquishing personal preferences. We can still wish for sunny days while embracing rainy ones wholeheartedly. We can pursue our goals while finding serenity when results diverge from our hopes. The essence lies in holding our desires lightly instead of allowing them to dictate our sense of fulfillment. Zen master Sung Tan once articulated, "The great way is not difficult for those who have no desires." This does not advocate for the eradication of all wants, but encourages us not to let those desires morph into demands that reality must satisfy for our peace to exist. Examine your own tendencies towards resistance. How often do you find yourself at odds with reality, yearning for circumstances to differ or convincing yourself that you will attain happiness once things change? This inner turmoil is not a necessity, it's a choice, one that you can learn to approach with greater skill. Buddha imparted that attachment does not entail a lack of care for things. It implies conditionality in our inner peace based on external outcomes. The shepherd genuinely cares for his flock and values comfort, yet his intrinsic contentment does not hinge on any specific result. As you reflect on today's events, both the pleasant moments and the obstacles, can you uncover the shepherd's secret within your own consciousness? What if true contentment is not deferred to better circumstances but is accessible right now through a shift in viewpoint? As Buddha taught, happiness does not depend on what you possess or who you are. It solely rests within. Reflections on awareness. The shepherd came to realize that when we loosen our grip on life's expectations, we find the liberation to appreciate existence as it is. Our subsequent tale illustrates the moment when comprehension transcends toil. This is neither water nor moon. The monk Kyono committed many years to rigorous Zen training and meditation. She dedicated endless hours to introspection, wrestling with profound concepts and pondering the ultimate lessons of the Buddha. Her commitment was unwavering. Rising before dawn each day, she maintained an impeccable posture despite physical discomfort, tackling her spiritual journey with a fierce resolve that impressed even her mentors. Yet despite her earnest endeavors and visible dedication, enlightenment remained elusive. She could intellectually grasp the teachings, articulate the nature of emptiness and non-duality, and even assist fellow practitioners with basic meditation. However, the definitive breakthrough, the immediate insight that would transform her perception entirely, stayed just out of reach. Thus, years passed. Kyono began to feel growing exasperation with her efforts. She observed her peers seemingly gaining insights that continued to evade her understanding. Doubts began to creep in regarding her approaches. She ramped up her dedication and sometimes speculated if there was some intrinsic ability for awakening among others that she simply lacked. One evening, after an especially long period of meditation and study, Kyono walked slowly back to her modest dwelling. She grasped an ancient wooden water bucket that she had filled at the well earlier that evening. The bucket was old, held together by worn strips of bamboo that had weakened over time. While it had served her well through the years, she sensed it growing increasingly fragile in her hands. As she traversed the moonlit courtyard, she became entranced by the view before her. The full moon hung beautifully in the night sky, its luminous glow bathing the temple grounds in a mystical light. However, what truly captivated her was the moon's reflection dancing in the water within her bucket. There, within her humble vessel, was a flawless, uninterrupted circle of light, a gleaming moon contained in water. She walked carefully, almost reverently, as she watched this reflected celestial body sway gently with every step. The image was so vivid, so perfect that it seemed as tangible as the moon soaring above. For a fleeting moment, she felt as if she was safeguarding something sacred, transporting this brilliant essence from the well to her quarters. Suddenly, without warning, The aged bamboo strips holding the bucket together gave way entirely. The bottom of the container fell away, releasing all the water to rush onto the ground in a singular, swift motion. In an instant, the moon's reflection vanished completely. With no water remaining, there was no moon. In that precise instant, as she witnessed the reflected moon disappearing when the water struck the earth, Kyono experienced total liberation. All her years of seeking and striving suddenly appeared to be unnecessary. The illumination she had sought, understanding, awakening, had never been separate from her. Just like the moon's reflection, it had seemed to exist independently but was simply the natural manifestation of what was already there. Buddha spoke of this truth when he said, "Look within. You embody the Buddha." The deeper message here conveys that spiritual enlightenment often arises not from accumulation but from release, not from clinging but from relinquishing. This age-old narrative unveils a fundamental irony in the quest for spirituality. We begin the journey convinced that enlightenment is something we must strive to acquire or reach through effort and discipline. We envision it as a distant milestone, a state of consciousness we currently lack but may attain through sufficient dedication. Kyono's years of sincere effort were not wasted. They constituted vital groundwork, akin to nurturing soil before sowing seeds. Yet her epiphany occurred the moment she ceased trying to capture and cling to spiritual understanding, choosing instead to witness its natural emergence and dissolution. Why do we struggle to acknowledge what is always already present? The questing mind generates the very division it seeks to overcome. When we ascertain that awakening exists out there or in a distant future, we fail to recognize the awareness that is perceiving these words at this moment, the consciousness that experiences thoughts and feelings without being confined by them. Reflect on how this dynamic plays out in your spiritual practice or personal growth. Do you sometimes feel as though you're pursuing insights, striving to attain peace, or endeavoring to reach a mental state that always seems just out of reach? The very attempt to seize these experiences may hinder our recognition that the awareness capable of seeking is precisely what we are in pursuit of. This doesn't imply we should abandon spiritual practices or self-improvement efforts. Kyono's years of discipline established the conditions for her realization. However, it encourages a different relationship with practice, immersing oneself fully while remaining loose-limbed regarding the results, like balancing water that might spill at any moment. A Zen master articulated this truth when he said, "The unborn is the Buddha mind itself." Once you've grasped this truth, the Buddha mind you were born with has been doing the Buddha's work from the beginning. What we search for in meditation, therapy, or self-improvement is the acknowledgement of what has always been present. The water and moon in this story symbolize the perceived duality between the seeker and the sought, between the ordinary mind and the enlightened mind. As long as we perceive these as separate, believing that the moon exists independently in the water, we strive to protect and preserve our spiritual experiences. Yet when we realize that the containers of our experiences, such as thoughts, emotions, or insights, are the same essence we seek, we find freedom. The unseen load. In moments of pause, we realize that the illusion of separation is merely a mirage. This teaching transcends structured spiritual practice and permeates all facets of existence where we pursue happiness, triumph, or fulfillment as if they were tangible objects to be obtained rather than reflections of our intrinsic nature. The perfect relationship, the dream job, the serene mental state, these are frequently mirrors we attempt to capture and hold, failing to recognize that their essence is already embedded within our ability to appreciate and strive for them. Zen teachings guide us to trust in the organic process of evolution rather than forcing revelations or insisting on specific experiences. Often, the deepest realizations surface when we cease to exert ourselves so vehemently in understanding. When we let our rigid constructs give way, allowing our carefully crafted spiritual personas to dissolve. As the Buddha shared, the one who has conquered himself is a far greater hero than he who has defeated 1,000 times 1,000 men. Kono's triumph was not over ignorance, but rather the insight that the struggle itself was rooted in a misconception. This evening, as you contemplate your own quests and efforts, can you envision what it might mean to surrender your spiritual containers? What if you cease to strive for and cling to your insights, instead embracing the inherent wisdom that already fuels your pursuits? The Buddha reminded us that within you lies a tranquility and a refuge to which you can retreat at any moment and embrace your true self. Perhaps what we seek has been seeing through our own gaze all along. Now, let us delve into a narrative about the hidden weights we carry in our earthly journey. This is the account of the void-filled backpack. In a tranquil monastery garden, where the morning dew sparkled on meticulously cared-for pathways, a young aspirant approached his mentor with a weighty inquiry clouding his heart. His eyes mirrored a mix of resolve and uncertainty as he respectfully bowed. "Master," he said, "I desire to grasp my earthly journey more clearly. Why do I feel burdened by my past, reliving it endlessly? What keeps me ensnared in my history?" The master gazed at the young man with empathy, then gestured towards an elaborate maze of semi-transparent silk panels glistening in the garden's filtered illumination. "Advance into the maze," he instructed, retrieving a leather backpack. "But take this with you. It will assist you in maintaining your focus. Be mindful though, for it carries considerable weight." The young man received the backpack, initially taken aback by its easy transfer from the master's hands. However, as soon as the bag settled into his hold, he gasped. The heft was remarkable, compelling him to lean forward as he struggled into the maze. Once inside the diaphanous labyrinth, he encountered solid barriers. Through the sheer material, he observed other seekers making their way like distant apparitions. No matter which direction he tried, every route appeared obstructed. Depleted, he sank down to ponder. "Others seem far ahead of me," he mused. "Would it be wrong to crawl under the silk?" Battling these thoughts, he ultimately chose the path of integrity. As he stood with renewed determination, an opening unexpectedly materialized. It felt gratifying to progress until he came upon another obstruction. This time, goodwill brought him no movement. The weight of the backpack became intolerable, digging into his shoulders. What could be so burdensome yet feel so light? Overwhelmed by curiosity, he unzipped the pack and looked inside. It was entirely vacant. Yet when he hoisted it again, the weight was undeniable. As he placed it back on his shoulders, a voice softly resonated. "Turn your gaze within, young seeker, for the heaviness resides there." Suddenly, His mind became inundated with memories. Those who tormented him in childhood, long-held pains, and grudges preserved through the years. As he revisited each distressing moment, the backpack's weight increased. Then realization dawned. I am the burden. I carry the weight of what troubles me. With this newfound clarity, he embraced the act of forgiveness. I release you, wherever you may dwell, he found himself expressing. Instantly, the bag grew lighter and new pathways emerged. As sunlight caressed his face and he recalled moments of love, the weight continued to dissolve until the backpack felt as though it had vanished entirely. Ultimately, amidst the stable silken barriers, he settled into meditation. I am both illumination and the journey. I recognized that I was my own obstacle, not anyone else. At these words, his feet began to lift from the ground. He soared above the maze, perceiving how others remained ensnared by darkness in their own burdens. With a thought, he found himself next to his mentor outside the labyrinth. "Master," he said, his face glowing, "I discovered that my own darkness is what created my weight, and my lightness allowed me to soar." The master smiled knowingly. "What do you feel now, young one? Do you sense your liberation?" Without waiting for a reply, he wandered away. The Buddha's wisdom reminds us that harboring anger is akin to grasping a heated coal intending to hurl it at another. You are the one who gets scorched. This age-old teaching reveals the profound truth illustrated in the tale of the empty backpack. We alone are responsible for our own burdens. The essence of this story prompts recognition that it is not our past that confines us. It is our connection to our past that restricts us. The young seeker realized that his suffering stemmed not from the actions of others, but from his reluctance to release those experiences. The empty backpack symbolizes the unseen weight of unprocessed emotions and unhealed scars we carry through life. Why do we tenaciously cling to our suffering? Firstly, we often attach our identity to wounds. We see ourselves as someone who has been wronged rather than recognizing we experienced wrongdoing but are not defined by it. Secondly, there's the comfort we find in familiarity. Even painful feelings can become cozy because they are known. Lastly, there's our misunderstanding regarding forgiveness. We believe it means excusing harmful actions rather than liberating ourselves from resentment. The weight of thought. Imagine life as a prison, burdened by emotional weights that we carry daily. The colleague who unjustly claimed your brilliant idea still ignites frustration within you. The parent who offered harsh criticism years ago continues to shape your inner dialogue. Each of these grudges acts as an unseen load in your backpack, dragging you down. Zen Master Jack Cornfield wisely said, "Forgiveness means relinquishing the desire for a different past." While we can't alter our history, we can shift our perspective on it. The energy we use to nurture grievances can be redirected toward constructing the lives we dream of. Letting go of these emotional burdens can lead to a sense of lightness, symbolized by the act of floating. This journey doesn't bypass the pain. Instead, it involves fully processing our experiences and opting for liberation instead of the comfort of familiarity. For growth rather than grievance. As you settle in for the night, consider what invisible weights you may be holding onto. Is it time to reflect on what you've clutched tightly and ask yourself, Does this enhance my well-being, or is it time to release it? In the spirit of the Buddha, remember, you are deserving of love and kindness, just like anyone else in the universe. The journey to freedom starts with profound self-forgiveness and the decision to travel lightly through life's inevitable challenges. Let's delve into a narrative about the weight we carry in our minds. There was once Master Hogan, who was enjoying a peaceful stroll with one of his most dedicated students in the tranquil monastery garden on a warm afternoon. This garden was meticulously arranged, featuring meandering paths that wound their way around ancient trees, serene ponds, and carefully positioned stones that had been placed by monks of the past to encourage meditation and contemplation. As they walked along a central path, the student's gaze was drawn to a massive boulder that stood out prominently in the garden. This stone was enormous, comparable to a small building, and it had been a part of the landscape for so many years that it was cloaked in moss and small plants flourished in its nooks. It was undeniably a significant and enduring feature of the monastery. The student, having immersed himself in Buddhist philosophy, looked for an opportunity to showcase the depth of his understanding to his master. He perceived in this prominent boulder a chance to engage in a philosophical dialogue that might demonstrate his grasp of intricate metaphysical ideas. With enthusiasm, he pointed at the stone and presented what he believed was an insightful question that would provoke a meaningful discussion about reality and consciousness. Master, he began with the confidence of one who is thoughtfully engaged with abstract spiritual concepts. The sutras tell us that all phenomena exist within consciousness. Everything we perceive is ultimately a manifestation of mind itself. With this principle in mind, would you say this large stone exists in my consciousness, or is it an object that exists outside of my mind? The student awaited a thoughtful response, clearly pleased with the depth of his question, anticipating an extensive philosophical exploration of the relationship between consciousness and the physical world. He had framed his question within the context of classical Buddhist metaphysics, engaging with some of the most advanced ideas in the tradition regarding perception and existence. Master Hogan paused, his calm yet penetrating gaze fixed on the student, carefully digesting the question. He didn't dismiss it, but recognized the mental snare his student had tangled himself in through excessive abstraction. Rather than getting lost in a complex philosophical explanation, Master Hogan replied simply yet profoundly, "You must have a very heavy mind to carry that stone around in it." The student stood in silence, the intricacies of his philosophical inquiry suddenly stripped away. In just one sentence, his master had illuminated the folly of his mental gymnastics while imparting a significant lesson about the nature of thought. The wisdom of the Buddha reminds us that all conditioned phenomena are transient, and we must earn our salvation through diligent effort. From this exchange, we glean a lesson about how our cognitive processes can create burdens that do not exist in reality. The deeper insight reveals that while intellectual analysis can be beneficial in certain contexts, it can also morph into mental baggage that weighs us down unnecessarily. The student had taken the straightforward experience of encountering a stone and complicated it into a philosophical dilemma requiring mental exertion to resolve. Hogan's reply underscored the absurdity of this entire mental exercise. The stone wasn't literally in the student's mind, nor did he need to determine its logical status to engage with it meaningfully. By highlighting the heaviness of carrying such concepts mentally, the Master underscored the unnecessary labor we impose on ourselves through excessive rumination. Why do we frequently complicate direct experiences with intricate cognitive frameworks? The thinking mind offers the illusion of understanding and control. When we categorize, analyze, and explain our experiences, we feel like we are mastering reality. Yet, as this story reveals, sometimes our elaborate explanations become weightier than the original experiences they are meant to clarify. This cycle is evident in our everyday lives. When facing a straightforward feeling such as sadness, we often dive into an analysis of its causes, crafting narratives about its significance, and developing tactics to manage it. What starts as a simple emotion transforms into a heavy psychological burden, the burden of thoughts. We often carry intricate projects in our minds or transform disagreements into elaborate mental exercises involving psychology, interpersonal dynamics, and grand theories about human nature. A simple misunderstanding can become burdened with conceptual complexities that hinder resolution instead of facilitating it. In spiritual practices, this inclination towards mental accumulation manifests as what could be termed as Dharma collecting, where we gather insights, techniques, and understanding that weigh us down instead of liberating us. We may dedicate years to meditation while compiling a sprawling internal library of spiritual principles that we lug around rather than merely sitting in silence and focusing on our breath. Zen Master Yunman remarked, "Every day is a good day." This suggests the potential to engage with each moment directly, free from the mental encumbrance of overanalysis or excessive interpretation. The stone in the garden is simply a stone, an entity to be enjoyed, perhaps sat upon, or merely acknowledged as we pass. It doesn't require philosophical categorization to be appropriately encountered. Hogun's teaching method was notably insightful, as he never dismissed his students' inquiries as erroneous or unwarranted. Instead, he highlighted the practical outcomes of excessive abstract thinking and the burden it creates in our mental landscape. By using the analogy of carrying physical weight, he made the heaviness of overthinking tangible and evident. This instruction does not suggest we should abandon all forms of thought or philosophical exploration. Intellectual comprehension certainly possesses its value and significance. However, it encourages distinguishing useful thinking that serves practical needs from mental elaboration that leads to unnecessary perplexity and weight. Sometimes, the most enlightening spiritual insight is realizing that we don't have to intellectually grasp everything. We can enjoy a stunning sunset without delving into the physics behind light refraction. We can experience love for another without constructing intricate theories regarding the essence of human relationships. We can meditate without dragging along complex notions of enlightenment. The Buddha emphasized simplicity, patience, compassion. These are your greatest treasures. In this sense, Owen directed his student toward the simplicity of treasure, the relief of releasing mental weights that we never needed to carry in the first place. As you unwind tonight, be mindful of the stones you might be holding in your mind, complex anxieties about forthcoming situations, intricate interpretations of previous occurrences, or sophisticated analyses of current realities. Imagine how it might feel to gently place these mental burdens aside, even for a moment. As the Buddha advised, tranquility originates from within. Do not seek it externally. Sometimes, The deepest serenity arises not from discovering better thoughts to entertain, but from realizing we don't need to juggle so many thoughts at all. Let's continue along our journey. The forthcoming story illustrates the distinction between aiding and holding on, the lesson of the two monks and the woman at the river. Two monks were journeying together along a mountainous trail, en route to a distant monastery to further their studies. Both were devoted practitioners who had adhered strictly to their vows as part of their spiritual journey, including a commitment to avoid any physical contact with women. This wasn't out of disrespect, but rather an understanding that such discipline assisted in maintaining focus on their spiritual growth. As they neared a swollen river where the usual bridge had been washed out by recent storms, they encountered a young woman hesitantly standing at the water's edge. The current was fierce and perilous, filled with debris from the mountain runoff, and she was evidently afraid to attempt crossing alone. "Please, esteemed monks," she called out to them, "would one of you assist me in crossing this treacherous water? I'm not capable of making it safely by myself." One of the monks immediately stiffened, his mind racing through the rules they had sworn to uphold and the potential implications of this scenario. The prohibition against physical contact with women was clear, and he began devising explanations for why they couldn't assist her, perhaps suggesting alternative options that didn't necessitate breaking their vows. Meanwhile, the other monk, observing the woman's predicament and the genuine danger she was in, made a different choice. Without hesitation or lengthy contemplation, he approached her and gently lifted her onto his shoulders. He carefully transported her across the turbulent water, ensuring her safety with every step before gently placing her down on the opposite bank. "Thank you immensely," she expressed with gratitude, bowing toward both monks before continuing along her path. As the two monks resumed their journey, an unexpected shift had taken place in the atmosphere between them. The first monk walked in growing agitation, his thoughts swirling incessantly about what he had just witnessed. As time passed, his internal turmoil intensified until he could no longer hold back his distress. "Brother," he exclaimed, bursting forth, unable to maintain his silence, "I fail to comprehend your actions by the river. Our spiritual training explicitly counsels against any physical contact with women. Yet, you lifted that woman onto your shoulders and carried her across the water. How could you so openly disregard our sacred vows?" His companion looked back at him with gentle astonishment and responded with clarity. "Brother, I set her down on the other side of the river hours ago, but you are still carrying her." The Buddha's wisdom teaches that clinging to anger is akin to grasping a hot coal intending to hurl it at another. You are the one who ends up burned. This narrative illustrates the critical distinction between compassionate engagement and the act of holding on, the journey of letting go. The connection between our current needs and past experiences raises an intriguing question. Why do we find ourselves holding on to situations long after they should have faded? We often replay scenarios and cling to grievances that exist solely in our minds. According to Zen Buddhism, a significant portion of our distress arises not from external events, but from our struggle to let go of experiences once they have passed. The turmoil of the first monk illustrates how strict adherence to rules can sometimes clash with the compassionate intent behind those rules. His companion recognized an individual in need and acted with kindness in the moment, releasing the incident immediately. In contrast, the first monk continued to dwell on the occurrence for hours, allowing it to weigh heavily on him with each step. Reflect on your own habits of replaying previous dialogues, holding on to past grievances, or mentally rehearsing incidents that have already concluded. How much of your mental capacity is consumed by situations that now reside only in your memory? While the woman traversed the river in mere minutes, the monk carried her in his mind for hours. This lesson extends beyond overt breaches of conduct. We cling to hurtful words from years gone by, errors we made long ago, and embarrassing incidents that nobody else recalls. Meanwhile, the present moment, rich with opportunity and genuine experience, slips away unnoticed as we bear the weight of past ghosts. In Zen teachings, we learn to differentiate between appropriate actions and unnecessary attachments. The second monk offered assistance when it was required and then moved on entirely. He didn't fixate on whether his choice was correct, nor did he fret about others' judgments or rehearse the event in an endless loop. Zen master Dick Naton imparted the wisdom, due to impermanence, everything is attainable. The act of crossing the river was transient. It began, fulfilled its purpose, and concluded. Only the attachment of the first monk to the incident bestowed it with ongoing existence in the form of mental anguish. The Buddha advised, release what has occurred. Release what may transpire. Release the current moment. Avoid overthinking. Don't strive to force outcomes. Just breathe and rest in this moment. This lesson underscores the liberating potential that arises when we cease to carry experiences beyond their natural conclusion. Examine closely what you may be holding onto unnecessarily. Old resentments, bygone failures, distressing conversations, and regrettable decisions all persist simply because you continue to elevate and carry them. How would it feel to finally set them down? The irony is striking. The monk who broke the rule experienced no discomfort from his action, while the monk who adhered strictly to the rules created hours of agitation for himself. This illustrates that suffering is often a product of our thoughts regarding our actions, rather than the actions themselves. As you find your mind drifting back to previous events, lingering grievances, or past situations, can you recall the example of the wise monk? Can you practice releasing what you've been needlessly carrying, discovering the lightness that comes from moving through life unencumbered by yesterday's burdens? Buddha's wisdom reminds us that, ultimately, only three things bear significance: how well we lived, how deeply we loved, and how effectively we learned to let go. Authentic spiritual practice is not about flawless adherence to rules. It's about responding fittingly to what is present and then fully releasing it to make way for what lies ahead. Now, let us delve into a tale exploring the essence of faith and self-doubt, known as the story of the wishing tree. A destitute man ambled through a thick forest, his shoulders weighed down by worry. Bills piled high, strained relationships, and deferred dreams. Each step echoed with the burden of his troubles. The treetops filtered sunlight into gentle patterns on the ground, yet he noticed none of that beauty. His mind relentlessly spiraled through his concerns, each thought leading to another worry, another burden amplifying the difficulty of his life. Exhausted from his trek and relentless pondering, he paused to rest against what seemed to be an ordinary tree. Its trunk was wide and inviting, its bark smooth against his back. As he leaned there, catching his breath, he realized how parched he had become. "I wish I had something to drink," he whispered to himself. Instantly, as if conjured from thin air, a cup of cool, clear water materialized in his hand. He gazed at it in disbelief, turning the cup to examine it for any signs of trickery or illusion. The water appeared pure and inviting. Hesitantly, he brought it to his lips and took a drink. It was the most revitalizing water he had ever tasted, cool and sweet, exactly what his dry throat craved. "That's odd," he murmured, but just then, his stomach growled with hunger. Almost reflexively, he wished for food. Before him appeared a simple yet nourishing meal on a wooden plate: fresh bread, ripe fruits, and vegetables that looked freshly picked. The enticing aroma made his mouth water. He savored each bite, marveling at the flavors. "My wishes are being fulfilled," he whispered in awe. That realization sent a thrill coursing through his entire being. "Then, I wish for a beautiful home of my own." Instantly, in the meadow just beyond the tree, a stunning house came into view. It was everything he had ever dreamed of: spacious, filled with light, tasteful furnishings, and gardens vibrant with blossoms. His heart raced with joy as he approached his new abode. "If I possess such a home," he thought, "I'll require help to maintain it." He wished for servants, and, without delay, several kind-faced individuals appeared, bowing respectfully and inquiring how they could assist him. The man laughed with delight, scarcely able to believe his astonishing luck. "And what is a beautiful home without someone special to share it with?" he pondered aloud. The journey of the wishing tree. Once upon a time, a man yearned for a kind, loving, and intelligent companion to share his life. Suddenly, a luminous woman appeared beside him, her gaze warm and her smile both soft and knowing. But as she reached for his hand, doubt surged within him. Stepping back, he said, "This is absurd. A person like me doesn't get such luck. This can't be real." The moment the words escaped his lips, everything around him began to dissolve. The woman's affectionate expression vanished, followed by the attendants, the exquisite home, and even the simple meal he once savored. Alone again, he found himself resting against what now resembled an ordinary tree, accompanied only by the burdens he once faced. He sighed, shaking his head in resignation. "I knew it," he murmured, exiting the forest with his mind quickly reverting to its familiar patterns of worry and discontent. Buddha's insight teaches us, we are shaped by our thoughts. Our reality stems from our thinking. Through our thoughts, we create our world. The essence of this lesson lies in recognizing the powerful nature of our beliefs and the self-destructive tendencies of doubt. Why do we so often disregard the blessings that enter our lives? Zen Buddhism uncovers a deeply ingrained habit of the mind, one that favors our limitations over our possibilities. We become so accustomed to struggle and so entwined with our difficulties that the idea of abundance feels foreign, even threatening to our identity. Reflect on how frequently you might experience unexpected kindness, notice stunning beauty, or stumble upon chances that could change your life. How swiftly do you dismiss these as mere coincidence or think they are too good to be true? This instinctual skepticism often leads us to walk away from the very blessings we seek. The wishing tree symbolizes the responsive universe that Zen teaches us about, a reality that reflects back our deepest beliefs regarding what we deserved and what is possible. When we approach life with trust and openness, we often uncover resources and opportunities that were always there but previously unseen. Conversely, when we come from a place of cynicism and self-doubt, these same possibilities tend to vanish into thin air. The man in our story had access to everything he needed. Yet his conditioning convinced him that someone of his ilk didn't deserve such gifts. His belief in his limitations became more powerful than the evidence before him. This illustrates the tragedy of self-doubt. It drives us to abandon the solutions to our own issues. Zen teacher Suzuki Roshi remarked, "Each of you is perfect as you are, yet there's always room for improvement." This paradox highlights the balance between recognizing our inherent worth while remaining open to growth. The man beneath the tree could not embrace both truths, that he was deserving of good things and that positive change was feasible in his life. In today's world, we encounter wishing trees consistently. A colleague may offer genuine friendship, yet we suspect ulterior motives. A perfect job opportunity may arise, but we convince ourselves of our unworthiness. A promising romantic relationship might develop, only for us to sabotage it for fear of disappointment. Each time we opt for familiar limitations over unfamiliar possibilities, we retreat from our own wishing tree. Buddha taught, "Doubt everything. Discover your own light." However, there's an essential difference between doubt that leads to wisdom and doubt that fosters self-defeat. Wise doubt questions assumptions and seeks truth, whereas self-defeating doubt presumes the worst about ourselves and our potential, treating these assumptions as undeniable facts. Zen practice encourages us to observe when we dismiss blessings, abundance, or love simply because they don't conform to our habitual narratives about ourselves. Can we remain receptive to the idea that we might be more deserving, more capable, more lovable than our upbringing suggests? Tonight, as you reflect on your day, can you pinpoint instances where you might have turned away from your own wishing tree? Perhaps a compliment you shrugged off, an opportunity you believed wasn't meant for you, or a moment of joy you cut short because it felt too fleeting. What might it mean to trust in your inherent worthiness to accept life's gifts? As Buddha noted, thousands of candles can ignite from a single flame, and the original candle doesn't diminish. Happiness doesn't lessen through sharing, it flourishes. The magic of the wishing tree isn't diminished by realizing wishes, it's realized through them. Our ability to embrace life's blessings doesn't wane by accepting them, it grows stronger. As we continue our exploration of Zen Buddhism's wisdom, let us delve into a story about the distinction between resistance and flow. This is the tale of the wise old man and the waterfall. In a mountain community, where a swift river carved its course through ancient rocks, a venerable Taoist sage often wandered along the riverside, observing the interaction between the flowing water and the rocky formations that attempted to divert its journey. The villagers recognized him as a gentle, reflective figure with an understanding of nature that many overlooked. One afternoon, as storm clouds loomed and rain began to pour, the river rose with unusual intensity. The once peaceful current became violent and unpredictable, barreling toward a steep waterfall that plunged into a rocky gorge below. Most villagers steered clear of this area during storms, knowing that anyone falling into the tumultuous waters would face grave danger against the jagged rocks waiting below. The old man, however, found himself caught amidst the sudden storm while traversing his typical route. As he attempted to retreat to safety, the muddy riverbank suddenly gave way beneath his feet. Before he had a chance to steady himself, he lost his balance and was swept away by the fierce current. Villagers who witnessed his fall gasped in horror. They dashed along the riverbank, powerless to intervene as the old man was carried toward the waterfall by the turbulent waters far too strong for any hope of rescue. They could only watch in despair as he vanished over the edge, plunging into the swirling chaos below. Expectations ran low. Survival seemed impossible, especially for an elderly man whose strength was waning. The villagers braced themselves to search for his body downriver once the water levels calmed enough to allow for such a recovery. But to their astonishment, as they hurried toward the base of the falls, they spotted the old man emerging from the water far below, completely unscathed. He walked to the shore with grace, water dripping from his attire, and sat down to rest as if he had just enjoyed a leisurely swim on a serene day. The villagers rushed to him, astonished by what they had just observed. How could this be? They questioned in disbelief. How did you survive that awful fall? The torrent was so fierce, the rocks so perilous. By all accounts, you should have perished. The old man regarded their concern with a smile. He wrung the water from his sleeves and pondered their inquiry thoughtfully before replying. I survived, he stated simply, because I harmonized myself with the water, rather than demanding it change for me. When I felt myself plummeting, I didn't resist the current or attempt to dictate its path. Instinctively, I allowed myself to be molded by it. When the water flowed downward, I flowed downward. When it twisted, I twisted along with it. Plunging into the whirlpool, I emerged alongside it. I became one with the water itself, and that is how I endured. The villagers listened attentively, beginning to grasp that they had witnessed something much more significant than a mere stroke of luck. They had observed a manifestation of a profound principle that the old man had cultivated through years of keen observation of the natural world. As the Buddha taught, nothing remains unchanged. Everything is in a constant state of flux. Existence is a continuous transformation. Here lies the insight of collaborating with life's currents instead of wearing ourselves out in vain resistance to forces beyond our purview. Why do we instinctively battle against challenging situations when adaptability could serve us far better? Zen Buddhism reveals that our ego-driven mindset believes it can control external variables through sheer force of will. Yet this mindset often leads to greater suffering than the initial challenge itself. The old man's survival was not mere chance. It stemmed from an understanding of essential truths about existence. When we align ourselves with the natural flow of events instead of insisting that life mold itself to our desires, we often unearth resources and opportunities that our resistance obscures. Reflect on your own interactions with challenging situations. How much energy do you waste fighting against aspects of life that you cannot change? The old man's lesson proposes a different path. Not a passive resignation, but a thoughtful adaptation that preserves our core essence while flowing with ever-shifting circumstances. This does not imply accepting harmful conditions or forsaking our principles. The old man did not relinquish his will to live. He merely altered his approach to survival. Rather than opposing the water's force, he utilized it. Instead of resisting its direction, he flowed with it while remaining attuned to his awareness and purpose. In relationships, careers, and personal struggles, we frequently encounter similar choices. We can drain ourselves trying to force outcomes, manipulate others, or mold external conditions to fit our expectations. Alternatively, we can learn to engage with the reality before us, discovering inventive routes to fulfill our deeper purposes through accommodation instead of confrontation. Zen Master Lasu once said, "Water is fluid, soft, and yielding. Yet, water can erode stone that cannot yield and is thus fractured." The old man embodied this philosophy, proving that what appears to be weakness can, when applied wisely, be a source of immense strength. The Buddha stated, "Hatred ceases not by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal law." This principle extends beyond hostility and encompasses all forms of resistance. Challenges are seldom resolved by direct confrontation, but through comprehending their nature and finding ways to engage with the underlying forces at play. Examine a current source of tension or conflict within your life. Where are you attempting to force the water to change course instead of learning to navigate with it? What would it mean to adjust yourself to the situation while upholding your fundamental values and intentions? As you encounter the inevitable streams of daily existence tonight, unexpected changes, difficult individuals, situations beyond your authority, can you recall the old man's wisdom? Can you seek out ways to maintain your balance while moving with the currents you cannot alter? Recognizing that perhaps the most straightforward route to your aspirations is the one that seemingly circumvents obstacles rather than confronting them head-on. The Buddha's wisdom ultimately distills into three essential tenets: how well we have lived, how well we have loved, and how adept we are at letting go. Learning to navigate the currents of life boils down to relinquishing our urge to control every detail while retaining the capacity to respond wisely to whatever emerges. Like water, we can embody both resilience and flexibility, persistence and adaptability, strength and gentleness. Now, let's delve into a story that exemplifies fearlessness and the empowerment that arises from embracing inevitabilities. This is the encounter between a general and the Zen master who stood unyielding. Amid the brutal civil wars that ravaged feudal Japan, armies surged across the lands. The timeless encounter. In eras past, when chaos reigned across the countryside, calamity struck as warlords laid siege to villages, seizing lands by means of terror and aggression. As news spread of an approaching warlord's forces, most inhabitants would promptly abandon their homes, clutching what few belongings they could muster, and retreat to the mountains or to relatives in far-flung towns. In one modest village, as the feared army closed in, the familiar scenario unfolded once again. Families hurriedly assembled their possessions. Shopkeepers hastily shut their doors. Within a brief period, the bustling streets fell eerily silent and empty. All had fled. All, except for the venerable Zen master who resided in the unadorned temple situated at the heart of the village. When the invading army arrived to find the village deserted, the general was taken aback to see smoke still billowing from the temple's chimney. Intrigued by the presence of someone who would dare, or perhaps foolishly choose, To stay behind when others had fled, he decided to personally check this anomaly. The general approached the temple accompanied by several of his officers, expecting to encounter either a frail elder too frail to escape, or perhaps a soul who had simply run out of time. Instead, he was met with the sight of the Zen master, tranquility personified, as he calmly tended to his garden, completely unfazed by the tumult surrounding him. Accustomed to fear and submission wherever his troops marched, the general was baffled by this old man's serene indifference to his authority. Leaders of villages would typically throw themselves at his feet, pleading for mercy and offering tributes to stave off destruction. Civilians would cower in fear upon witnessing his soldiers. Yet here was a man whose placid demeanor in the face of such might was as perplexing as it was infuriating. As the general's expectation for deference decreased, his rage intensified. He could not comprehend how anyone could fail to grasp the severity of the situation or the formidable power he wielded. "You fool!" the general bellowed, his voice resonating ominously through the vacant courtyard as he reached for his weapon. His resplendent armor glimmered ominously in the sunlight, and he gripped his sword with practiced skill. "Do you not realize you stand before a man who could end your life without a second thought?" Yet the threat, which had instilled terror in countless others, left the master unfazed. He continued his careful nurturing of a small flowering bush, his hands steady and countenance calm. When he finally gazed up at the general, it was with the same composed focus as one would offer an ordinary visitor to his garden. "And are you aware," the master responded with unwavering equanimity, "that you are standing before a man who can be killed without the slightest concern?" The general found himself momentarily speechless, his sword half drawn as a blend of anger and astonishment washed over him. In all his years battling foes and securing conquests, he had met various forms of bravery, be it the desperate valor of cornered fighters, the defiant wrath of vanquished foes, or the reckless audacity of young soldiers. Yet, he had never witnessed anything like this, a profound acceptance devoid of fear, an utter calm in the face of mortality. The master's reply unveiled an idea the general had never contemplated, that a power greater than the capacity to take life existed, which was the fearless understanding of death. Here was an individual who had embraced the fleeting essence of life so entirely that the threat of imminent demise held no sway over him. Gradually, the general sheathed his sword. Without uttering another word, he pivoted and departed from the temple, leaving the master to pursue his gardening in tranquility. The village stood unscathed by the war, not due to military tactics or negotiated agreements, but as a direct consequence of one man's absolute lack of fear. As the Buddha articulated, "All phenomena are transient. Strive diligently." Herein lies a discovery of great significance found in the courageous acceptance of this truth, instead of endlessly trying to evade it. Why does embracing our mortality impart such authority and presence? Zen teachings reveal that much of our anxieties derive not from external threats, but from our frantic attachment to impermanent things. When we relinquish such attachments, the threats themselves lose their ability to disturb our inner harmony. The general's authority stemmed from the fears others had of death and loss. But someone who has thoroughly accepted life's temporality cannot be threatened by what they have already willingly set free. The master's lack of fear was neither bravado nor indifference. It was the natural outcome of comprehending impermanence so fully that even the concept of his own death posed no dread. Reflect on your own engagement with intimidation and threats in the everyday world. How much of your trepidation arises from your bond with current situations, safeguarding your reputation, or maintaining your physical well-being? The Master's reaction indicates that genuine invulnerability does not originate from being untouchable, but from possessing nothing that can be seized. This isn't to imply passivity or a desire for harm. The Master did not welcome death or incite violence. Rather, his profound acceptance of mortality's certainty liberated him from the suffocating fear that constrains most when confronted with real peril. The Buddha wisely remarked, "Better a single word that brings peace than 1,000 empty words." The Master's singular response bore more weight than any threat because it arose from a place of absolute acceptance rather than resistance or trepidation. As you reflect this evening on the myriad of pressures and threats surrounding you, can you recall the Master's profound response to the General Sword? Can you discover a space where an acceptance of impermanence fosters not resignation, but rather a form of unshakable presence that refuses to be intimidated? The wisdom of the Buddha reminds us that the essence of existence hinges on the absence of fear. True liberation does not come from evading it. The Stonecutter's revelation. Danger exists, but through deep understanding, we can become untouchable, rendering external threats powerless against our inner serenity. As we immerse ourselves in the teachings of Zen Buddhism, let's delve into a tale that highlights the essence of contentment and the nature of desire. The journey of the stonecutter. In a village perched high in the mountains lived a humble stonecutter who unknowingly possessed the key to happiness. Each morning, he would navigate winding paths to the quarries, his tools resting on his shoulders. While he toiled among the stones, he would sing timeless mountain songs that resonated through the valleys. Despite being deemed poor by societal standards and residing in a modest cabin with minimal possessions, the stonecutter craved nothing beyond what he owned. His uncomplicated existence felt fulfilling. The cadence of his labor, the splendor of the mountains, the joy derived from dignified work, all combined to keep his heart unburdened. One day, he was summoned to labor on the opulent estate of a wealthy noble. As he drew near, he gazed in or at the grandeur surrounding him. Marble pillars soared toward the heavens, and gardens unfurled in flawless order. At that moment, for the first time, the stonecutter experienced a jolt of desire that disrupted his peace. "If only I were affluent," he lamented, "then I wouldn't need to toil and sweat for a living like I do now." To his astonishment, a voice emerged from the stones, declaring, "Your wish is granted. From now on, anything you wish for will come to fruition." That evening, he returned to find his humble dwelling replaced by a mansion as splendid as the noble's. Overjoyed, he relinquished his tools and embraced the lavish lifestyle of the wealthy. However, on a sultry afternoon, while peering out from his ornate window, he beheld the king's royal procession passing by. The monarch basked in the cool shade, flanked by noblemen and servants, projecting an air of serenity and authority amidst the heat of common folk. "I wish I were a king," he mused, and instantly found himself nestled on silk cushions in the royal coach. Yet, the carriage proved too warm for comfort. Even with its thick walls, the relentless heat penetrated. "I wish to be the sun," he proclaimed, and suddenly, He became the celestial body radiating light and warmth across the cosmos. At this point, he reveled in his magnificence and dominance, until dark storm clouds gathered and obscured his brilliance. "I choose to be a cloud," he asserted, transforming into a mighty storm cloud, relishing the capability to shield the sun. Yet, as he turned into raindrops, he faced a colossal rock that obstructed his descent. "A mere rock is more powerful than I," he lamented. "I wish to be a rock." In an instant, he stood immovably on the mountainside, feeling a sense of true permanence and strength. Soon after, however, he heard the sound of chiseling below. Peering down, he saw a diminutive figure, a human being, chipping away at the stone. "A tiny being possesses more power than I," he realized. His final wish was to be human once more, and so he returned to his role as a stonecutter, ascending the familiar mountain paths once again. Yet, something profound had shifted within him. As he carved stones and felt the mountain breezes, his heart brimmed with profound satisfaction. His song, now richer than ever, thrummed through the air. He had learned to embrace contentment in his true self. The Buddha once stated, "Health is the greatest gift. Contentment is the greatest wealth." This age-old wisdom sheds light on the unending cycle of desire that blinds us from perceiving the abundance within our lives. Why do we relentlessly pursue various conditions, constantly believing that happiness resides in the next transformation? Each fulfilled desire merely unveils another, perpetuating a cycle of discontent. The stonecutter's adventure illustrates the futility of seeking joy through external circumstances. Reflect on your own iterations of this cycle. "I'll be happy if I get that promotion," only to uncover new pressures. "I'll feel fulfilled with more wealth," only to discover that greater riches bring fresh anxieties. Each milestone simply reveals another peak to ascend. Zen Master Suzuki Roshi wisely noted, "Each of you is perfect as you are, yet a little enhancement won't hurt." This paradox lies at the essence of contentment, the capacity to fully embrace what exists while engaging wholeheartedly with life's inevitable transformations. The stonecutter's ultimate change was not into something superior, but into a profound gratitude for his long-standing identity. His work remained unchanged, yet his perspective on life shifted entirely. Real contentment does not emerge from varied experiences, but involves bringing a fresh awareness to whatever life presents. Tonight, as you observe your mind reaching for what's absent, consider experimenting with the wisdom of the stonecutter. Can you discover the melody within when you cease striving to be anything other than your authentic self? As the Buddha imparted, contentment is true wealth. Luxury is nothing but artificial poverty. The most significant transformation lies not in becoming different, but in recognizing the innate wholeness of who we already are. Our next tale will illuminate the distinction between mere knowledge and genuine awareness. This is the narrative of a teacher who believed he had achieved enlightenment. After a decade of rigorous training under various masters, poring over countless texts, and immersing himself fully in Zen practice, a monk named Tenno finally reached the pinnacle of his aspirations, recognition as a qualified teacher. His comprehension of Buddhist philosophy ran deep. His meditation practice was profound and unwavering, and his ability to guide others had stood the test of scrutiny. He received formal acknowledgement that he was prepared to educate on the Dharma and assist others on the path to awakening. Filled with pride over his achievement and eager to learn from one of the most esteemed masters of his time, Tenno resolved to visit the legendary Zen master Nannen. The older teacher was renowned for his wisdom and insight, making Tenno anticipate deeply engaging discussions about the Dharma with great enthusiasm. Awareness in ordinary moments. It was on a dreary day that Tenno embarked on his journey to the temple of Nannen. The pathways were saturated and treacherous, with puddles mirroring the overcast sky. The relentless drizzle necessitated that he carry an umbrella for protection from the elements. Upon arriving at the temple, he respectfully removed his wooden clogs and set them on the sheltered porch alongside his umbrella, adhering to the customary practice. He adjusted his outer garments, steadied his thoughts, and stepped into the temple to meet the esteemed master. Nannen welcomed him warmly, bowing in a manner befitting a fellow educator while maintaining the grace that came from his deeper wisdom. They settled in the modest receiving room, and Tenno anticipated that their dialogue would explore intricate doctrinal nuances, detailed meditation strategies, or possibly the intricacies of mentoring others. However, after the customary exchanges of greetings, Nannen posed a question that felt strikingly ordinary. "I observed that you left your clogs and umbrella at the entrance when you came in. Could you tell me, did you place your umbrella to the left of your footwear or to the right?" Tenno was taken aback. Among countless profound topics, why was this celebrated teacher inquiring about such a trivial matter? He wrestled to recollect the brief moment he organized his belongings, but was increasingly disheartened to find he could not remember it all. His mind had been so engrossed in the significance of their meeting, so absorbed by the profound conversation he anticipated, that he had executed the simple task of arranging his items almost absent-mindedly. "I don't remember," he murmured, his voice nearly a whisper. In that instant of surrender, the full weight of his lack of awareness descended upon him. Here he was, an acknowledged teacher of mindfulness and presence, unable to recall a simple action completed mere minutes prior. Nannen's expression was one of boundless understanding, not derision. "Then you have yet to achieve true awareness," he spoke gently. "A person who is truly awake gives their full attention to every instant, every action, every nuance of existence. The manner in which you organize your belongings reveals the same level of focus you apply to meditation, teaching, and the entirety of your life." In that moment, Tenno's pride crumbled, replaced by the humbling realization of the depths of his practice yet to be explored. He came to understand that genuine awareness isn't merely a skill to be acquired. It's a quality of focus that must be nurtured in every moment, in both the mundane acts as well as in the loftiest spiritual endeavors. Without hesitation, Tenno requested to become Nannen's pupil. For the next decade, he dedicated himself to the master's teachings, learning to apply the same level of mindful attention to the act of placing his shoes that he afforded to formal meditation, to imbue the arrangement of his umbrella with the same reverence he offered to sacred texts. Upon leaving Nannen's temple, he transformed into a markedly different educator. He knew that enlightenment wasn't a fixed endpoint, but rather a journey of continuous engagement. It is not merely a personal accomplishment, but an ongoing practice rooted in total presence. As the Buddha noted, if you wish to understand your past, observe your current state. If you seek to know your future, contemplate your present actions. This narrative brings forth the insight that authentic spiritual progression is measured not by our moments of peak experience, but by the quality of focus we maintain during ordinary instances. Why do we tend to believe that enlightenment dwells solely in exceptional contexts, in structured rituals, or elevated states of consciousness? Zen Buddhism asserts that awakening is found in our capacity to be wholly present in whatever occurs, whether in meditation or in simply setting an umbrella next to our shoes. Tenno's oversight was common among spiritual seekers. He had honed his ability to be mindful during specified practice sessions, yet had yet to extend that same quality of awareness to everyday tasks. He could engage fully while meditating, yet slip into distraction during the simplest actions. This dichotomy between spiritual engagements and routine activities is one of the most insidious traps along the path to awakening. We often presume consciousness to be a state we can activate during meditation and deactivate during banal tasks. But genuine practice entails integrating awareness into every facet of life. Reflect on your own daily life. How attentive are you while carrying out tasks like brushing your teeth, brewing coffee, or putting on your shoes? Do you engage with these activities using the same quality of attention you apply to more significant endeavors? The divide between formal practice and informal activity frequently exposes where our awareness requires growth. Master Dogen proposed, practice and enlightenment are one, suggesting that the quality of consciousness we nurture in any moment is both the means and the end. There's no distinction between cultivating awareness and being aware. Each moment provides a complete chance for awakening. Nanen's inquiry was not merely about umbrellas and shoes. It probed whether Tenno's spiritual maturation had permeated the very fabric of his daily existence. Could he sustain the same level of presence while executing mindless routines that he brought to deliberate spiritual practice? The Buddha taught, mindfulness is the path to the deathless. Heedlessness is the path to death. Those who practice mindfulness do not die. Those who are heedless are as if already dead. True vivacity lies in total presence, which can be nurtured in any task, no matter how trivial or ordinary may seem. Examine your own relationship with formal practice versus daily life. Where do you allocate attention to specific actions while others are conducted on autopilot? This isn't a call for obsession, but rather for an enriched engagement with every moment. The journey of presence. The essence of our practice goes beyond meticulous attention. It encompasses the realization that the mindfulness we cultivate during meditation can positively influence every facet of our existence. Paradoxically, the most mundane moments often present the best opportunities for awakening. During formal meditation, we naturally assume a state of mindfulness. Yet while engaged in trivial tasks like organizing our personal items or handling daily chores, we can assess whether our practice has genuinely taken root or is still limited to specific moments. In Zen traditions, practitioners learn that washing dishes is as significant as reciting sutras, and cleaning floors is as vital as delving into philosophical studies. This perspective doesn't suggest that these chores hold inherent sanctity, but rather that the consciousness we bring to each task defines its spiritual significance. Thich Nhat Hanh insightfully stated, washing dishes is not merely a means to achieve cleanliness. It is also a method to immerse ourselves completely in the present. This conveys the essential lesson imparted by Nan to Tenno. Every task provides a chance to embody complete presence. The inquiry posed by the master illuminated that Tenno's years of training had bolstered his awareness during dedicated practice intervals, yet had not fully integrated that awareness into the continuous rhythm of his everyday activities. He was able to maintain consciousness at will, but he had yet to cultivate a state of awareness that was instinctual. This synthesis is what sets true spiritual maturity apart from mere spiritual knowledge. It's relatively simple to be mindful when prompted, while the deeper practice involves nurturing a natural kind of awareness that persists regardless of our deliberations. This evening, as you engage in the routine rituals that conclude your day, be it brushing your teeth, changing into pajamas, or preparing items for the next day, can you apply the same level of focus that you would dedicate to formal meditation? Can you uncover whether your spiritual practice has seeped into the automatic patterns that constitute so much of your daily life? Buddha's teachings remind us that each moment serves as an instructor, and every location can act as a classroom. The umbrella resting beside the footwear served as Tenno's mentor on that day, highlighting precisely where his practice needed further development. Often, the most profound insights are presented to us in the form of seemingly simple questions posed by masters wise enough to realize that authentic awakening resides not in escaping the ordinary, but in recognizing the sacred within it. As we proceed on our path through the teachings of Zen Buddhism, let us explore a lesson regarding the fleeting nature of all we possess and our belongings. This tale revolves around an inn that refers to itself as a palace. In ancient India, a notable spiritual guide spent many years roaming from town to town, imparting the Buddha's wisdom to all who would listen. His name and reputation for insight and compassion had spread far and wide, even reaching the ears of aristocrats and rulers. Eventually, during his travels, he found himself at the capital of a grand kingdom, where a splendid palace towered over the lively streets like a crown encrusted with jewels. This palace was a sight to behold, constructed with exquisite marble and adorned with precious gems that refracted sunlight into dazzling displays of color. Surrounding it were gardens filled with rare blooms and flowing fountains, while guards clad in shiny armor vigilantly maintained their posts throughout the grounds. This establishment was undoubtedly home to someone of immense wealth and authority. The spiritual teacher approached the entrance with the same poised demeanor he consistently exhibited, whether in the presence of dignitaries or the destitute. The guards recognized him from his unassuming robes and tranquil presence, allowing him to proceed without hindrance. As he walked along corridors adorned with silk tapestries and ornate sculptures, the teacher made his way to the throne room, where the king sat upon a lavishly carved throne, elevated above the marble surface. Courtiers, dressed in splendid garments and sparkling jewels, gathered around the throne, their ornaments shimmering under the light filtering through tall windows. The king, a man in his middle years dressed in rich purple silk robes adorned with a golden crown, glanced up as the teacher entered. He had anticipated this visit, though was uncertain about the nature of their forthcoming discussion. "What do you seek?" the king inquired directly, his voice authority-laden, accustomed to immediate compliance. The teacher bowed in respect yet spoke with quiet assurance. "Your Majesty, I request a place to rest in this inn." A murmur of surprise rippled through the assembled courtiers. The king's brows furrowed, and his look shifted from intrigue to bewilderment. "But this is not an inn," he replied, gesturing to the lavish surroundings. This is my palace. I govern this kingdom, and this has served as the royal seat for generations." The teacher regarded the king with thoughtfulness, as if weighing his words carefully. "I see. Might I inquire, Your Majesty, who held ownership of this palace prior to you?" "My father," the king replied defensively. "He ruled for 30 years until his passing. This palace has been his seat of power, just as it is mine." "Ah," said the teacher, showing genuine curiosity. "And who possessed it before him?" "My grandfather," the king responded, noticing a shift in the nature of the conversation. "He ruled from this throne and has also passed." The teacher paused, allowing the gravity of these statements to resonate throughout the throne room. The courtiers fell silent, acutely aware of the profound twist of this unexpected dialogue. Even the king, against his own instincts, found himself waiting for the teacher's reaction. Finally, the teacher articulated his thoughts with a gentle clarity that seemed to envelop the ornate chamber. "And in this place where inhabitants linger briefly before moving on. The transitory nature of existence. Did I hear you correctly? This is not an inn." The ensuing silence was absolute. The king remained still upon his throne, the teacher's inquiry breaking through layers of unquestioned assumptions and identities. The courtiers stood rigid, as if encountering a revelation that transcended their usual concepts of royal decorum and worldly authority. The Buddha conveyed, "All conditioned things are transient. Strive for your liberation with fervor." This profound insight emerges within the teacher's incisive question regarding the inn masquerading as a palace. Why do we hold on so tightly to possessions and statuses that are inherently fleeting? Zen Buddhism elucidates that our attachment to permanence engenders suffering, clashing with the core truth of transience. Everything we consider our own, even our own identities and physical forms, we ultimately hold merely for a time. Reflect on your own reality. The dwelling you call home, the vehicle you drive, the professional title you bear, the bank balance you scrutinize, these are all temporary holdings. You occupy them temporarily, moving on just as others did before you and will after you. This understanding doesn't imply we should neglect our duties or be careless with our belongings. Instead, it encourages us to approach them with a sense of lightness, acknowledging their ephemeral nature. The king's palace was indeed a spectacle of grandeur and served vital purposes, yet it was unmistakably an inn where inhabitants resided for a time before moving on. The deeper message illustrates how clinging to momentary roles leads to unnecessary anguish. Losing sight of the fleeting essence of our roles, be it as a parent, employee, homeowner, or even as a seeker in Zen, leads to distress in attempting to preserve what is not meant to be permanently held. Examine your attachments. Perhaps they reside in your professional identity, your relationships, your physical well-being, or even your spiritual accomplishments. Each holds significance and is deserving of care, yet all are susceptible to transformation. The executive transforms into a retiree. The parent evolves into an empty nester. The student shifts into a teacher. The robust may face illness. These changes are not failures but rather natural manifestations of impermanence. Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh stated, "Thanks to transience, all things are achievable." This wisdom reframes impermanence from a source of fear into one of celebration. Nothing endures forever. States of suffering can metamorphose into joy. Hearts once closed can open to love. Even the most entrenched habits can evolve toward wisdom. In Zen practice, we nurture what is termed non-attachment, caring deeply while holding lightly. This doesn't suggest we become emotionally distant, but teaches us to love without clinging, perform our tasks without grasping, and savor moments without seeking permanence. The spiritual teacher's perception cuts through the illusion that we are eternal proprietors of anything. We are all transient guests in the inn of existence, borrowing roles and possessions for the brief spell we dwell in them. This realization may evoke either despair or deep liberation, contingent upon our acceptance of it. The Buddha remarked, "All things are transient. Strive to embody as much virtue as you can." This insight inspires us not to squander our fleeting time in the inn, but to utilize it wisely, nurturing love, wisdom, and compassion while we have the chance. As you settle into your own temporary abode tonight, surrounded by your own transient belongings, can you feel the profound liberation that accompanies recognizing their fleeting essence? 0. 5. Can you discern how this understanding might actually heighten your appreciation rather than diminish it? As the Buddha taught, of all imprints, that of the elephant reigns supreme. Similarly, of all meditative subjects, the contemplation of death is paramount. By acknowledging the impermanent nature of our stay in this inn of life, we uncover the urgency and preciousness of every moment we receive to practice love and awareness. Now, let us delve into a narrative concerning the bravery to flow with the rhythms of existence. This is the tale of the Crystal River. At the heart of a magnificent crystal river, where waters shimmered as clearly as mountain air, resided a vibrant village of tiny creatures. The river's flow above them was akin to a gentle sigh, carrying the wisdom from countless springs and far-off oceans. Young and old, affluent and modest, all made their homes along the sandy bed. Each creature clutched tightly to stones, branches, and roots. 4 generations, holding on had been their means of survival. Every creature learned from the moment of birth to entwine their limbs around river rocks and fallen trees. Hold tight, the elders warned. The current is perilous. It will sweep you away into uncharted territories. Safety lies in remaining precisely where you are. Yet one diminutive creature grew weary of this endless clinging. Day by day, he observed the current flowing above, marveling at its purposeful and graceful movements. While his neighbors lamented the energy spent on maintaining their holds, he pondered what it might feel like to trust in that flowing water. "I am weary of holding on," he declared one morning. "Though the destination remains unseen, I believe that the current knows where it leads. I shall release my grip and allow it to carry me wherever it goes, for I fear that if I continue to cling, I might perish from boredom before truly living." The other creatures gasped in disbelief. "Fool," they exclaimed. "Letting go will hurl you mercilessly against the rocks beneath. You'll be battered and broken, dying far swifter than any boredom could kill you." But the small creature was resolute. Glancing back at his companions one last time, he released his grasp on the well-known stone. Instantly, the current enveloped him, and just as his peers had forewarned, He was tumbled and tossed across the rocky floor. His tiny body spun. In the heart of nature's flow, a creature faced the relentless onslaught of stones, each impact a source of unimaginable agony. As he clung tenaciously to the familiar, something extraordinary began to unfold. Despite the excruciating pain, he chose to yield to the river's power, resisting the urge to reach for new anchors. Gradually, the current elevated him from the treacherous depths below. The violent tumbling ceased. The rocks were no longer a threat. He began to harmonize with the current, abandoning the struggle against its pull and instead moving fluidly with its rhythm. As he drifted downstream, onlookers from afar beheld an astonishing sight. Here was one of their kin, yet he seemed to be soaring through the water, gracefully embodying the strength of the flowing stream. "Witness a miracle," they exclaimed. "A being like us, yet he soars. He must be the savior destined to rescue us all." Hearing their exclamations, the creature felt a wave of compassion for their misinterpretation. "I am no savior," he called out. "We all possess the river's joy, if only we dare to release our hold. Our authentic purpose lies not in clinging to the riverbed, but in embracing this journey, a magnificent adventure of trust and letting go." Nonetheless, the creatures only cried louder, "Savior! Savior!" Even as they shouted, they tightened their grips on stones and roots. They watched until he rounded a bend, then began crafting myths about the wondrous savior who had momentarily blessed their midst. The insights of Buddha resonate here. What you grasp is what you lose. This age-old wisdom shines a light on the fundamental paradox of human existence. Our lives are spent clutching at security and control, convinced that our safety hinges on clinging to familiar experiences. Yet, it is precisely this grasping that creates the suffering we strive to evade. Why do we hold on so tightly when the current beckons us toward uncharted adventures? Zen Buddhism teaches us that from a young age, we are conditioned to perceive the known as safe and the unknown as threatening. This conditioning can form spiritual barriers that inhibit our growth beyond the confines of familiarity. Additionally, we tend to fall prey to the illusion of control, mistakenly believing that by gripping circumstances, relationships, and identities, we can halt the natural march of change. Such resistance breeds immense tension, pitting us against the very essence of reality. Life is in perpetual motion, and when we defy this truth, we exhaust ourselves by battling currents far mightier than our individual intentions. Reflect on the facets of your life where you find yourself clinging. Maybe it's a relationship that has evolved beyond its initial form, a career that no longer sparks joy, or an image of yourself that now limits your growth. Change will flow regardless of our resistance. Our choice lies in whether we will wear ourselves out in vain opposition or uncover the grace that exists in conscious surrender. The Buddha taught us, change is the only constant. Water does not contend with the mountains. It discovers the natural path downward. As we learn to glide along life's currents instead of pushing against them, we uncover an effortless efficacy that rigid opposition can never achieve. As you take a moment of stillness tonight, what might you be prepared to let go of? Perhaps it's a concern about challenges awaiting you tomorrow, lingering resentments from disappointments past, or a limiting self-definition that feels too constricting now. Can you attune yourself to the current of this moment's vibrancy and trust its flow? As the Buddha advised, release the past. Release your anticipation of the future. Release what is occurring in the present. Relax in this very moment and find rest. Within this trust, we can realize that the current we dreaded may actually be the force that leads us back to our true essence. Now, let's delve into a narrative about choice, accountability, and the power we possess in every moment. This is a story of a young man and a bird. A perceptive young scholar grew weary of his teacher's seemingly wise responses to every inquiry. Convinced that the old master merely spoke in riddles to appear enlightened, he set out to concoct a test to unveil what he believed to be a facade. After careful contemplation over several days, he devised what he thought was the ultimate trap. One morning, he captured a small sparrow from the garden. The fragile creature quivered in his hands, its tiny heart racing against his palms. He concealed it behind his back as he approached his teacher, who sat serenely in the morning light, engrossed in ancient texts. "Master," the student exclaimed, barely containing his excitement, "I have a query that will challenge your legendary wisdom." The aged teacher lifted his gaze from the page, his eyes warm and patient. He recognized the glimmer of mischief in the student's expression, a familiar sign of youthful confidence seeking to test authority as part of their own development. "Please," the teacher replied simply, "ask your question." The student stepped closer, holding the bird securely behind his back. "Master, I have a small bird in my grasp. With your profound wisdom, tell me, is this bird alive or dead?" The young man felt a surge of cleverness. He had devised what he thought was an unsolvable dilemma for his teacher. If the master declared it alive, he would swiftly snap the bird's neck, revealing it as dead, thereby proving the teacher incorrect. If, on the other hand, the master claimed it dead, he would simply open his hands and let the living bird take flight, again challenging the teacher's supposed insight. Either way, the student was confident he would uncover the old man's so-called wisdom as nothing more than random guesses and philosophical mumbo-jumbo. Eagerly, he awaited the answer that would fulfill his desire to outwit the elderly sage. The teacher remained silent for an extended moment, neither peeking behind the student's back nor seeking further information. His gaze seemed to trace not the student but beyond him, as if perceiving something far deeper than the mere trick that was unfolding. The bird in the hand. With a gentle smile that conveyed both kindness and awareness, the master said, "The solution, my young friend, lies within your grasp." The pupil stood still, his mouth slightly agape. In just 3 simple words, his intricate trap had been entirely unraveled. The teacher had not fallen into the snare of the false dilemma. Rather, he had directed the young man toward a deeper realization, the essential truth that the student alone possessed the power to dictate the outcome. The young man glanced down at his hands, which were still cupped behind his back, feeling the rapid heartbeat of the little bird against his palms. He suddenly understood with remarkable clarity that the master was correct. The bird's destiny had never been contingent on the teacher's response or claimed wisdom. It had always rested entirely in the student's hands. More significantly, he began to see that this truth extended beyond this singular moment. The authority to decide between life or death, creation or annihilation, kindness or malice, All of it was always in his hands every single day. Gradually, the young man brought his hands forward and opened them. The tiny bird paused momentarily, as if collecting itself, then unfurled its wings and soared into the azure sky, vanishing among the foliage. Buddha's teachings remind us that we are shaped by our thoughts. Everything we are emerges from our considerations. Through our thinking, we generate the world. This timeless wisdom sheds light on the profound accountability that accompanies conscious choice and the awareness that we continually construct our own reality. Why do we so frequently search outside ourselves for answers that can only be uncovered internally? Zen Buddhism highlights our inclination to rely on authority figures who instruct us on what to do, how to think, and what to select. Yet, the most profound lesson is that genuine wisdom cannot be transferred from one individual to another. It must be unearthed through our own deliberate engagement with life. The questions posed by the students seemed directed at the teacher's perception, but they were fundamentally about his own agency. He was so preoccupied with discrediting the master that he nearly overlooked the significant truth being offered. Every moment is rife with choices that mold not only our immediate situations but also our character and future. Reflect on your daily choices, both major and minor. How often do you wait for someone else to dictate what the correct decision is? How often do you seek validations or guidance for choices that lie entirely within your own dominion? The bird in the young man's hand symbolizes all the strength we possess yet sometimes overlook. In our interactions, careers, and spiritual journeys, we constantly encounter moments where we hold something valuable in our grasp. The welfare of others, our own integrity, avenues for growth or harm. The results do not hinge on external factors or others' wisdom, but on how we choose to wield the power we have. The Master's reply reveals a vital aspect of genuine teaching. True educators do not merely provide answers, they guide us back to our own inherent capacity for understanding. They assist us in recognizing the decisions we are already making and the power we inherently possess, rather than fostering reliance on their authority. Zen Master Charlotte Juko Beck observed, "We are constantly making choices, even when we think we are not." The bird in the student's grasp signifies all those times we fool ourselves into believing that we are devoid of options, power, or accountability. Yet consciousness invariably encompasses choice, and choice forever entails responsibility. Delve deeply into a current obstacle you're facing. Where are you anticipating that another person will supply answers, solutions, or guidance? How might your circumstances shift if you fully realize that the ability to dictate outcomes is already within your grasp? This acknowledgement does not imply that you control all external factors, but it does affirm that you have autonomy over your reactions. The Buddha taught, "The mind is everything. What you think you become." Each thought, every intention, every action embodies the student's decision with the bird. It poses an opportunity to generate life or death, beauty or suffering, wisdom or folly. The resolution is perpetually in our hands. As you reflect on the various aspects of your life where you seek guidance or feel powerless, can you perceive the fundamental truth the Master was illuminating? Can you feel the significance of the choices you bear every day, not as a burden, but as the essential dignity of conscious existence? As the Buddha noted, no one can rescue us but ourselves. No one can and no one may. Each of us must navigate the path. The bird flies free, not due to the teacher's insights, but because of the student's decision. By recognizing our capacity to choose life over death, kindness over cruelty, truth over deceit, we uncover that the response to every important inquiry has always resided within our grasp. Our subsequent narrative uncovers the strength of returning to what is genuine when fear threatens to engulf us. This is the account of the captured warrior. In ancient Japan, during an era marked by relentless conflicts between warring clans, a skilled fighter found himself on the disadvantaged side of a fierce encounter. As his fellow warriors fell around him and defeat loomed inevitable, he was taken captive by enemy soldiers and dragged away from the battlefield. His armor removed, his weapons seized. That evening, they confined him within a dark, cramped cell with stone walls that felt as though they were closing in on him. The heavy wooden door slammed shut, echoing ominously through his core. As darkness enveloped the prison, the warrior's mind began to race with dread-filled possibilities. Tomorrow they would come for him. He was aware of the brutal customs of war. First would be the interrogation, aimed at extracting intelligence regarding his lord's defenses, troop movements, and strategic plans. When he steadfastly refused to divulge anything, as honor dictated, they would resort to torture. Hot iron, bamboo splinters beneath his fingernails, methods he had only heard of in horrifying tales. The silent truth of mastery, described in whispers by fellow warriors, the fate that awaited him loomed larger than life. Once they were done extracting their fill of his silence, or when their patience thinned, the end would surely follow. As these thoughts consumed him, his heart started racing with such intensity he feared it might shatter. His breath turned shallow and quickened, beads of sweat forming on his brow despite the evening chill. Sleep felt impossible as his mind conjured vivid images of the suffering that awaited him at dawn. Hours wore on in this distressing state. The warrior shifted restlessly in his cramped cell, leaned against the unforgiving stone walls, or sprawled on the rough straw-strewn floor. Nothing offered solace from the parade of doom that replayed endlessly within him, like a dreadful dream he couldn't shake. But in the depths of his despair, a soothing voice of his Zen master from the monastery where he had trained before embracing the warrior's path echoed in his mind. The aged teacher's words came to him as if he'd never left the master's presence. Tomorrow is but a mirage. The only truth exists in the now. Initially, the warrior's frightened mind pushed back against this wisdom. How could the future be an illusion when the threats felt so tangible, so unavoidable? Yet as he paused and let the teaching seep in, a shift began to take place. He became aware of his breath. In this moment, he noticed he was inhaling freely. The straw beneath him felt rough yet not painful. Outside his window, he could hear the wind rustling through the trees, a reminder that nature continued its ageless patterns amidst human turmoil. At that instant, he realized he was not being tortured. In that moment, he was simply a man in a cell, alive and aware. The horrors that had felt so overwhelming moments earlier were unraveled as mere thoughts about a tomorrow that existed solely in his imagination. As this insight blossomed, an extraordinary calm enveloped the warrior. His breathing steadied and slowed. The frantic pounding of his heart settled into a rhythmic beat. For the first time since his capture, A smile graced his lips. The master's wisdom had liberated him from a confinement far more stifling than the stone barriers encasing him, the prison of anxious thoughts regarding the future. In mere moments, the warrior sank into a deep, serene sleep. The Buddha once said, "To understand your past, observe your present state. To glimpse your future, reflect on your present actions." This age-old wisdom casts light on the profound realization the warrior made in his confinement. The one and only moment we ever truly inhabit is this one. Why do we inflict suffering upon ourselves, inventing endless narratives about what is to come? Zen Buddhism clarifies that our minds evolved as tools for survival, always on alert for dangers and planning for defense. While this instinct is invaluable during real crises, it becomes an origin of distress when we confuse mental formations for reality. Examine your own experiences closely. How much of your stress derives from vivid forecasts of possible futures that may never materialize? The presentation you dread, the medical test results you wait anxiously for, the tough conversation you must have. These scenarios predominantly exist in your thoughts, not in the reality of the present moment. The lessons of the warrior suggest that we can recognize future challenges without succumbing to them. Planning and preparation are important, yet when they slip into an obsessive grip, they strip us of serenity and clarity. As the revered Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh stated, "Because of impermanence, everything remains possible. The future is unwritten, influenced by causes and conditions beyond our complete comprehension." The worried mind anticipates that current difficulties will invariably persist or escalate, but impermanence teaches us that everything shifts. The warrior in his confinement could not foresee what tomorrow actually held. Perhaps his Lord's forces would orchestrate a rescue. Perhaps mercy would be shown by his captors. Perhaps negotiations would ensure his release. The Buddha addressed this when he taught, "The past is gone. The future is not yet here, and there exists only one moment for you to live." This instruction doesn't propose we neglect future responsibilities or bypass prudent planning. Instead, it encourages us to acknowledge where our focus commonly drifts and to gently redirect it back to the richness of our current experience. In the practice of Zen, we nurture a perspective known as beginner's mind, engaging with each moment anew rather than through a lens of preordained anxiety. When we genuinely occupy the present, we often find it teeming with resources for tranquility and clarity that anxious thoughts obscure. Think about how the warrior's adjustment in focus transformed his experience. The same cell, the same unpredictable future. Yet by returning to a present moment consciousness, suffering transmuted into peace. This transformation is accessible to us in every moment marred by anxiety or fear. Tonight, when you catch your mind spinning tales about the challenges of tomorrow, recall the captured warrior and his master's teachings. What is genuinely occurring at this moment? What straightforward experiences, like breathing, sitting, or feeling the air's temperature, can ground you in reality rather than imagination? As the Buddha advised, do not linger in the past. Do not dream of the future. Focus your mind on the present moment. Within this teaching lies the key to liberating both the warrior from his cell and ourselves from our self-imposed confines. Let us now delve into a narrative about mastery that transcends mere techniques. This is the artistry of the butcher. Lord Wenhui was well regarded throughout his kingdom for his appreciation of excellence in various forms. From musicians to craftsmen to artists, he had honed his ability to identify true mastery whenever he encountered it. One day, while touring the kitchens of his residence, he stopped to observe his chef, a man named Ding, as he prepared meat for the evening's feast. What unfolded before Lord Wenhui was unlike anything he had ever witnessed before. The art of butchering, a sacred dance. With careful finesse, Cook Ding transformed a colossal ox into a masterpiece, his actions resembling a choreographed dance far more than a commonplace kitchen duty. Each motion flowed into the next, a ballet of gestures. The way he extended his hand, shifted his shoulder, stepped with his feet, and bent his knees was perfectly synchronized. The edge of Ding's knife glided through the animal with a lyrical grace, whispering softly as it navigated between joints and around bones. The enormous ox seemed to dismantle itself effortlessly under his skilled hands, as though the meat and bones were dissolving like mist in a gentle breeze. There was no brute force, no clumsy hacking, just an uninterrupted flow that made the entire act appear almost otherworldly. Absolutely magnificent. Lord Wenhui declared, unable to hide his astonishment. Such unparalleled talent could only stem from years of unwavering dedication and practice, he thought. You must have honed your craft for decades to achieve this elegance. Pausing his work, Ding set down his knife with reverence and faced his lord, exuding humility despite his evident expertise. With the wisdom of one who has profoundly grasped the essence of his vocation, he replied, "What truly drives me goes beyond mere technique or length of time spent practicing. It is the way itself, the fundamental order that governs all existence, transcending specific methods." His enthusiasm grew as he elaborated on his insights. In the early days of butchering oxen, many years ago, I was overwhelmed by the solid mass of the animal before me. It felt like an insurmountable task, and I tried to conquer the meat and bones with force and struggle. However, after 3 years of daily dedication, my perspective began to transform. I no longer viewed the ox as a single overwhelming entity. I began to recognize the individual parts and the intricate structure, discovering how the body was organized. Cook Ding's voice took on a mystical tone as he shared his profound realization. Now, after many more years, I no longer rely on visual cues to guide me, nor conscious thought to dictate my actions. My senses fade away, allowing my spirit to flow to where it is meant to go. I have learned not to impose my will upon the animal, but to follow its natural structure. He gestured reverently toward the half-butchered ox, demonstrating his deep respect for his craft. I traced the natural lines present within the body, moving through the spacious gaps between joints, guiding my knife through the openings that naturally exist, and operating in sync with reality rather than against it. I never force my blade onto ligaments or tendons, Ding elaborated, and I do not struggle with the major joints. My knife glides through natural pathways, finding routes that allow for grace rather than resistance. A lesser cook might opt for a new knife monthly, as he struggles and fights through the labor. A skilled cook may require a new blade annually due to still cutting through rather than flowing with the process. Proudly, Cook Ding lifted his knife and presented it to Lord Wenhu. "I have utilized this same knife for 19 years and have butchered countless oxen with it. Yet, behold, the blade remains as sharp and pristine as the day it was first crafted." He explained, "This is a result of recognizing the natural spaces that exist between all joints, and since the knife possesses no thickness, inserting something devoid of thickness into an already existing gap offers ample room to maneuver. This understanding is why, after all these years, my knife remains impeccable." Lord Wenhu stood silent for several moments, realizing he had witnessed something far beyond remarkable butchering skills. He had observed a demonstration of what it means to operate in full harmony with the natural order and achieve mastery through submission rather than domination. The Buddha once taught, "When we know ourselves connected to all, acting with compassion is simply what we do." This ancient wisdom unveils how genuine mastery emerges not from force but from a profound understanding of our relationship to the entirety. It invites us to discern the vital distinction between mere technical skill and wisdom in practice. Through Cook Ding's journey, we understand that true mastery transcends basic proficiency. It embodies a manner of engagement that aligns completely with natural principles, rather than opposing them. His knife has remained sharp because he never utilizes it to battle against resistance. Instead, he seeks out the natural openings that are already present. Why do we often attempt to tackle challenges through brute force rather than a fluid approach? Society conditions us to believe achievement requires struggle, prompting us to surmount obstacles through sheer will and effort. While commitment and practice are undeniably important, Cook Ding's journey reveals a more nuanced comprehension of how mastery develops. Consider how this lesson could resonate in your own skills or areas of growth. In relationships, we might try to push conversations or alter perspectives through debate instead of recognizing the natural gaps for understanding and connection. In creative endeavors, we might wrestle with our medium instead of allowing what wants to arise organically from our interaction with it. The evolution that Cook Ding described, from perceiving the entire ox to identifying its components, to moving beyond mere visual perception, offers a pathway for all of us to explore. The tale of the Zen master and the thief. The evolution of wisdom is a profound journey, akin to navigating any complex domain. Initially, we confront experiences as daunting challenges that compel us to employ rudimentary approaches. Over time, as our comprehension expands, we begin to discern the intricacies and connections at play. Ultimately, through diligent focus, we may reach a state beyond mere analysis, operating from a profound intuitive wisdom. This doesn't imply a rejection of meticulous study or rigorous practice. Cucking exemplified exceptional technical proficiency through years of unwavering dedication, allowing his expertise to evolve into a deeper understanding of how to align with the natural flow of life rather than resisting it. Zen Master Dogen articulated, "Time is not distinct from you, and as you remain present, time does not elude you." Cucking understood this principle intimately, engaging fully with the present moment in his culinary endeavors. He discovered the timeless intervals between movements where his knife could glide with ease. This lesson extends beyond the kitchen, shaping our engagement with tough conversations, creative tasks, physical hurdles, or spiritual exercises. Rather than perceiving each circumstance as a battle to win, we can learn to identify natural openings, the spaces conducive to gentle actions, the inherent structures that inform our responses. The Buddha wisely noted, no matter how many sacred texts you read or how much you articulate, what value do they possess if not acted upon? Cucking brought these sacred words to life through his deeds, showcasing that any activity can transform into a spiritual practice through the right lens. As you reflect on the hurdles you face tomorrow, can you envision approaching them with culinary wisdom? Instead of immediately seeking out obstacles to conquer, might you first tune into natural openings, the spaces encouraging gentle transitions? In the Buddha's words, just as a mother would shield her only child with her life, cultivate boundless love for all beings. Perhaps true mastery resides in nurturing such sensitivity that we honor the essence of what we encounter while safeguarding both our own essence and the integrity of our tasks. Let's embark on a narrative exploring the transformative strength of fearlessness and unconditional compassion. This is the narrative of the thief and the Zen master. One serene evening, as dusk draped the sky in hues of purple and gold, Zen master Shichiri Kojin sat in his modest abode, reciting ancient sutras. The rhythm of his voice flowed smoothly through the tranquil spaces, each word a meditation, each breath a prayer. The gentle flicker of candlelight illuminated the walls as he immersed himself in the sacred verses, finding deep peace within the familiar texts. In an instant, tranquility shattered. The front door swung open with a resounding bang, and a desperate figure burst in, brandishing a sharp sword that shimmered ominously in the candlelight. His eyes were frantic, his garments tattered and soiled, and his breath came in heavy gasps from his hasty arrival. He had evidently targeted this remote dwelling, believing it would yield easy prey. "Your money or your life?" he demanded, his voice quivering with a blend of trepidation and aggression. He anticipated that the old man would cower, plead, or scurry in panic for whatever treasures he might possess. Yet, Shichiri did not even glance up from his sutra. His voice remained calm and steady, continuing his recitation for a moment before addressing the intruder. "Please don't interrupt my practice," he said in the serene tone one might use to request someone to close a door. "If you seek money, it's in that drawer over there." He gestured nonchalantly toward a modest wooden chest and then resumed his recitation as if nothing unusual transpired. The thief stood there, sword still raised, utterly perplexed. In all his years of thievery, he had never encountered such a response. There was no fear, no pleas, no hostility, only a calm, helpful demeanor as though he were a neighbor borrowing a tool. Stammering in confusion but proceeding with his mission, the thief approached the indicated drawer and began collecting the coins and small items he found within. The master's tranquil voice continued behind him, reciting sacred scripture as peacefully as if he were alone. Just as the thief prepared to depart with his ill-gotten gains, the master called out once more. "Hold on," Shichiri said, finally lifting his eyes from the text. "Please don't take everything. I need some of that for my taxes tomorrow. Leave a bit for me, would you?" The thief stared at him in disbelief. Here was a man being robbed, calmly negotiating the terms of his own robbery as if they were discussing ordinary matters. Almost instinctively, the thief returned some of the coins to the drawer. As he turned to exit, certain that this bizarre encounter was finally concluding, The master stopped him yet again. "You took my money," Shichiri remarked, his tone tinged with reproach, "and you didn't even express gratitude. How rude, don't you think?" This final statement left the thief utterly speechless. His hand trembled with the sword. Never had he been so thoroughly unsettled during his most violent confrontations. Here was an individual treating robbery as if it were a favor, more concerned with courtesy than with his own safety. "Thank you," the thief stuttered before fleeing into the night as swiftly as his legs would allow. Later, when he was captured and confessed to several crimes, including the incident at Shichiri's residence, the master was called as a witness. The court authorities expected him to seek justice, to describe the terror and violation he had endured. Instead, Shichiri spoke, the gift of unconditional love, with the same calm clarity he had presented that night. "This man did not take anything from me. He spoke truthfully. I offered him the money willingly. He even expressed his gratitude, although it required a slight reminder." The thief, bound in chains, felt something crack open within him as he absorbed these words. This individual had not only shown remarkable kindness during the act of theft, but was now shielding him from the repercussions. For the first time in years, tears streamed down his face. Not tears of self-pity or rage, but tears of realization. He had encountered something entirely new. Love without strings attached. Upon his release from incarceration, the reformed thief sought out the master, pleading to become his apprentice. Under Shichiri's gentle guidance, he learned to nurture the same fearless compassion he had witnessed that fateful night. Years later, through diligent practice and the master's unwavering faith in his capacity for change, he reached profound peace and the enlightenment of wisdom. As the Buddha noted, hatred does not end through hatred, but only through love. This is the timeless truth. What emerges from this narrative is the transformational power of confronting violence with absolute serenity, counterbalancing taking with generosity, and answering fear with love. Why do we inherently believe that force must be met with force, that aggression necessitates a defensive response? Zen Buddhism reveals that this instinct, while intuitive, frequently sustains the very conflicts it aims to resolve. When we react to hostility with hostility, we merely escalate the cycle of suffering. However, when we respond with true compassion, not meek submission, but active love, we create a possibility for change that wouldn't otherwise arise. Reflect deeply on your own encounters. When someone approaches you with anger, criticism, or demands, what is your automatic reaction? Most of us instinctively ready our defenses, gearing up to protect ourselves through counterattacks or retreat. Yet, pay attention to what occurs in your body and mind during these defensive responses. Does the tension diminish or amplify? Does the conflict settle or escalate? In Zen practice, we develop what may be termed the bravery of defenselessness. This doesn't imply being oblivious to real dangers or allowing ourselves to be harmed unnecessarily. Instead, it signifies cultivating the confidence to face challenging situations from our highest wisdom rather than our most primal reactions. The Buddha taught, in the end, just three things matter: how well we have lived, how well we have loved, and how well we have learned to let go. Shichiri exemplified all three in his encounter with the thief. He lived from a space of total presence, loved without conditions, and relinquished any attachment to his material possessions or even his personal safety. Think about the individuals in your life who pose challenges. The difficult coworker, the critical family member, the aggressive driver on the road. What would it mean to respond to their energy with the same fearless compassion Shichiri demonstrated? Not by conceding or yielding to their demands, but by refusing to mirror their level of reactivity, while remaining connected to your own core of peace regardless of their behavior. Tonight, as you face your own instances of tension or conflict, can you recall the master who treated a robber as an esteemed guest? Can you find the space between stimulus and response where choice resides? Where you can choose to counter aggression with peace, response with generosity, and fear with love. Buddha's wisdom reminds us that better than 1,000 empty words is one word that brings tranquility. Occasionally, the most impactful reaction to violence is simply to stand steadfast in our commitment to compassion, knowing that love possesses a transformative power that force can never rival. Thus, we come to the conclusion of these gentle lessons. Each one serves as a quiet reminder of what you have always known. Like those ancient Zen masters, seated in their temple gardens, you've realized that peace has never been something to pursue or seize. It has always existed here, patiently lying beneath every thought, every worry, every moment of restlessness. Your mind has found its way back home to this innate stillness. There is nothing more to accomplish now, nowhere left to venture. Rest well, and thank you for joining us here at